So you're Divergent? That's not even a faction! Hello, and welcome to this video where I will be recapping all of Divergent in 2.5 hours. Now, could you technically watch the movie in that amount of time? Yes, but this is more fun, because I get to make fun of it when it gets cringy. To be honest though, this book kind of holds up pretty well still. I was shocked I liked it as much as I did as an adult, but there are still some parts that are just, woo, very, 2010s YA. Now, if you do like listening to me recap books instead of reading them yourself or watching the movie, go ahead, like this video, maybe subscribe if you really want to. All that helps a girl out so much. And if we can get this video to 2K likes, I will start working on recapping the next book in this series. But now, without any further ado, let me send you over to Recap Natalie. Let's start this off with a quick world overview so you will actually understand what's going on as we get into this recap. In the world of Divergent, they all live in a post-giant war that probably had nukes involved, and it seems like the only place that has people anymore is Chicago. That's it. And the people in charge decided the best way for them to never fight again was to separate everybody into extremely specific factions that believed in their one thing more than anything else. And you would be right in saying it doesn't sound like a good plan because it's not. But let's get into these very specific groups of people now, called the factions. First we have Amity. They're all about peace and they dress like the cutest little hippies you've ever seen. It's that girl that's always wearing the best thrifted pieces and you don't know what thrift store she's going to. They're all in Amity. That's where they are. Then there's Erudite. They value intelligence and they're always dressed like they're going to some really important office job that has a name that kind of sounds made up, like Chief Happiness Officer or something like that. Then we got Candor. They value honesty more than anything else. They never lie. Then you've got Abnegation. They value selflessness, and because of this, they basically run the entire government, except for a few seats. Those are taken up by one person from the other faction. So they at least have some sort of voice in this whole thing. These people also refuse to look at themselves in the mirrors except for very specific times each month, and they also eat very bland food. Hey, you don't have to hate yourself to be selfless. You can have some spices, it's okay. And then of course, we've got Dauntless. They value bravery. So much so that most of them have gone beyond the point of bravery where they're just doing stupid stuff 24/7, risking their lives. And these very sane people serve as the military and law enforcement of this world. Oh, and they also all just dress like they rated the local Hot Topic. And I think with all that, you now have at least the basic knowledge so we can actually get into the book. Let's do that. We start with Beatrice, a 16-year-old abnegation girl who's getting her hair cut by her mom right now. Her mom is actually named Natalie, and I completely forgot about this detail until I reread this book. I'd watched the movies. I at least read the first book, and this just went out of my mind. But her name's Natalie, my name's Natalie. If you don't know, if you didn't look at my username, that's fine, but now you know. Anyways, this is a very important day. Not only does she have the aptitude test coming up, the test that will tell them the best faction for them to spend the rest of their lives in. Normally people get the faction they grew up in, but sometimes it tells them something different. And then they'll choose whatever faction they want to go to at the choosing ceremony tomorrow. Because even if the test tells you one faction, you can still choose another faction if you think that one's the best one for you. But this is also the day she gets to look into the mirror for a few seconds. Whoa, Abnegation, you're really pushing the line there. What if she looks at herself and she's like, wow, I'm pretty. Selfishness creeps in just like that. After they're done with her little haircut, they hop on the bus like normal with her brother and her father. Now, her and her brother Caleb are very close in age, so they're actually both taking the aptitude test today. They're not twins, they're just, is it fraternal twins? Is that the right word? Irish twins? I think that's right. Anyways, this means they're both taking the aptitude test and going to the choosing ceremony tomorrow. Tris may be a little personally conflicted on what faction she's going to choose tomorrow, but she knows her brother Caleb belongs in Abnegation. There's no question in her mind he will stay here. He is the most selfless person she knows. They finally get to school, she's walking in like normal, and then all of a sudden a boy from Erudite shoves her to the ground, calling her stiff. This is a slang word, rude way to call somebody a member of Abnegation. Right now there's a lot of tension with Erudite and Abnegation because Erudite over here with all their brain power thinks that maybe they should have more say in the government. And they also have some crazy theories that Abnegation is really actually very selfish. We'll get into that a little more later, but that's all you need to know for now. She does her best to not let any of this get to her, and she just wanders over to the window to watch Dauntless jump off of the moving train to get to school. Yeah, this is a normal everyday occurrence. This is how they get around the town. They get on a train and then they jump off. The train slows down a little for them to jump off, but not a lot. I would just like to know, do they have 5-year-olds doing this? Are you just born as an infant and they're like, good luck, hopping off the train? What is the safety protocol here? There's not one, that's the answer. She actually happens to come to this window most days to watch them do this because they just intrigue her. She gets through the rest of the day, then finally, after lunch, it's time for the aptitude test. Caleb goes first, and when he comes back, he is pale as a ghost. And then it's her turn. Her group is led to a row of 10 rooms. Now, these are only used for the aptitude test, and you're not allowed to go in them unless you're taking this test, so there is no practicing for this thing. You have no clue what you're about to experience because nobody's allowed to talk about it. She walks into the room only to see a bunch of mirrors on the walls. Uh-oh, what's a girl to do? Not mirrors. The abnegation's worst enemy. How will she ever be selfless now? In the middle of this room filled with mirrors is a dentist-looking chair hooked up to some machine that's beside it, and a random girl from Dauntless that she's never met before. And as somebody who personally hates going to the dentist so much that I feel like this chair would trigger me, I would leave the room. I'd be like, you know what? I'm one of the factionless now. I don't want to sit down there. Please don't make me. I promise I go to the dentist. I just hate it. This lady that's in the room asks her to go and take a seat on this dentist chair. She agrees and she sits down, still not knowing what's about to happen. But all she can think is, this looks like a place where terrible things happen, and she's right. She's absolutely right with that take. We learn that the other woman in the room is named Tori. She's from Dauntless because most of the people doing these tests are actually from abnegation, but somebody from your own faction isn't allowed to administrate your aptitude test. So some Dauntless members and a couple other random faction members have to volunteer to administer this, so the people from abnegation can actually take it. They talk for a little while she's getting some things set up, she's getting wires hooked up, and then she gives her this little vial of something and says, drink it. Beatrice is trying to get Tori to tell her anything about what's about to happen, but she just says she's not allowed to, so she decides that she might as well just drink up. She does, and then she closes her eyes. When she opens them, she is standing in the middle of the school cafeteria. It's snowing outside and all the tables are empty except for 2 baskets that are right in front of her. One has a hunk of cheese and the other has a knife. A woman behind her says, choose. She tries to ask why, but this woman just again says choose. She can't accept that she's just supposed to choose one of these things and takes so long that the objects just disappear. The simulation got so annoyed with her, they said, fine, do it your own way. She then hears a door open, so she turns to look that way, and then she sees a dog growling, creeping towards her. This is a massive dog. This dog would give you scary dog walking privileges. She thinks about running away from this dog, but realizes the dog would just catch her and kill her that way, so she decides her best option right now is just to get down on the floor, lay down, and completely submit to this dog. After she's been lying down for a little bit, she notices that the growling has stopped. Then she feels something wet touch her and realize it's the dog licking her. She starts to bond with this dog until, a random child is in the room. And this kid's like, oh my word, a puppy! And starts going towards the puppy, but this puppy just started getting along with this human. A random child is too much. So the puppy starts running after this child. And Beatrice is like, well, I can't let the child die. So she goes sprinting after this dog and tackles it. Her head just hits the ground though, and now the dog is gone. And now she's back in the testing room, but she's completely alone. She takes some time to look in the mirror, and then she goes out the door because there's nothing to do here. When she goes out this door, she doesn't go into a hallway, she goes into a bus. That's not normally where this door leads, but it is in the simulation. A random man on this bus asks her if she knows this guy that's in the newspaper. Now, this isn't somebody she thinks she knows in real life, but the simulation is claiming that he's a brutal murderer. Now, even though she's pretty sure she doesn't know this person, there is a voice in the back of her head that's telling her she does. And it's also telling her that it's a bad idea to tell this random man that she knows this other random man. They argue back and forth for a bit on if she knows this person, and finally it gets to a point where this random man tells her, if you know him and you tell me, you could save my life. And all this girl says is, well, I don't. After that, she actually wakes up, she's in the testing room, she looks behind her to see that Tori is just sitting there with her lips pinched together. And when she finally speaks, she just says, well, that was perplexing, and then leaves the room telling Beatrice she'll be right back. She's just left sitting here panicking that she might be factionless. That's where all the people go that don't belong to a faction. They basically do all the manual labor, stuff like that. It's not really a fun time for them. But finally, Tori comes back in and apologizes about worrying her, and then tells her that her test results were inconclusive. Now, this isn't normal at all. This test is designed to eliminate factions one by one until you're left with one left, then that's your faction. But she's left with a few more than one. So really, her aptitude test results are for abnegation, erudite, and dauntless. And you see, people with these kind of results are called divergents. is the name of the book. Tori explains to her that she can tell no one about this, and she means no one. Beatrice is just like, okay, yeah, obviously I'm not supposed to tell anybody about my test result. Tori gets even more serious now and tells her, no, you can tell no one, ever. Being divergent is extremely dangerous. Do you understand? Beatrice doesn't really understand, but she says okay. Then Tori tells her that she is going to go home and say that she got sick at the aptitude test. And she's gonna figure out what faction she wants to go to because she has options. But Tori will be logging her results as abnegation because Tori can't just put down she's divergent. Then there's a scene where she's walking home, she runs into a factionless man, he asks for food, they have a really weird encounter, and he's basically just being a creepy old man, but then tells her to choose wisely for her aptitude test results. I understand why they cut it from the movie, it wasn't needed. When she gets back to her house, she doesn't actually go in until Caleb gets home because the house tracks who's coming and going and gives exact timestamps, and she doesn't want her parents to know she had to come home early because that would make them ask questions. And when Caleb asks her when he gets back, she just informs him of the same old story that she got sick after the aptitude test. But he doesn't take that for an answer, and he's trying to get her to spill what actually happened in her aptitude test. But she's not gonna tell him that, and uses the excuse that they're not supposed to talk about their test results anyways. He's honestly a little shocked by this because normally she will bend rules. She's not above bending the rules. And this really feels like something she would just normally tell him about. But he instantly stops pushing when she asks him about his test results. Then, from far in the distance, she hears the train horn that all the Dauntless get on, and she can't help but think, maybe that's Dauntless calling her. It's a big mystery what faction she's gonna choose tomorrow. They go in, they cook dinner, and when their parents get home, they all eat together, and her mother starts talking about how there was a kid at the aptitude test today that got sick and had to be sent home early. Trish is just sitting there like, that is so strange. Who could it be? Who knows? And even when they're asked directly if they know this kid, both of these siblings go, nah, we don't know him. And then the parents just keep on talking because in abnegation, the children aren't allowed to speak unless spoken to at the dinner table. It's a sign of respect for their parents. But might I just say, this seems pretty selfish on the parents' part. They're talking about their day though. It was a bad day for him. When she asks what's wrong, he just says that Marcus, one of the leaders of abnegation, was being difficult today. They all technically make decisions together, her father being on the council, but Marcus seems to have more sway than the others, so we're just gonna call him the leader to make things simple. Her mom starts poking around a little bit more to find out if this is about the reports that Janine Matthews has been releasing about abnegation. This sends her dad into this whole rant about how erudites are self-righteous and so arrogant. How dare they comment on Marcus's character when we all know he's a perfectly good guy. Beatrice's little nosy self over here can't hold her tongue and has to ask what this report said about Marcus. We learned that this report accused Marcus of abusing his son, and that's why his son left abnegation to go to Dauntless. She knew he had a son, but she had never really heard anything about him or seen him because he never really left their house when he was part of abnegation, but he left around 2 years ago. Her parents keep ranting about this whole situation and even call Tobias a traitor for leaving abnegation like he did. More her father than her mother is accusing him of this, but they're both not super happy about it, it seems. They all then have a very awkward goodnight with her father just basically telling them, don't be stupid, choose abnegation tomorrow, but not actually saying those words. Another thing I should mention about this faction, they don't do physical touch. Shaking hands, hugging, anything like that, not part of their life. So they don't hug to say goodnight, kiss the forehead, anything like that. They're just like, good night, don't make dumb decisions tomorrow, all right. Now let's get to the next day for the choosing ceremony where the story really starts. They're saying goodbye to their parents as they prepare to go over to this building, cut their hand open, and drop a thing of blood on a stone to represent what faction they're choosing. Because we had to have a little fantasy-esque moment in here with drawing blood from your hand, which really hurts. Why do they keep doing this to people? It also takes forever to heal. Can we stop making people cut their hands open for things, please? They're sitting in this big auditorium now, and Marcus is going on this whole big speech about how all the factions are so important and for them to choose what their heart truly wants to do for the rest of their lives. Have I mentioned they're only 16 years old? Yeah, at 16, they're like, you know what? You know yourself well enough. Choose what you want to do for the rest of your life. Choose what you value most. I didn't know anything at 16. I still don't know anything at 22. Anyways, he finishes up his speech and these 16-year-olds start signing their lives away. cutting their hands open. Some people go, and then we have our first faction transfer. He's from Dauntless going to Candor, and Dauntless looks betrayed. They're not happy about it. They're muttering over there like, how dare he do this? He will be seen as a traitor to Dauntless now, because how dare you have a different personality than your faction and want to leave them. Then finally we get to our brother Caleb. He goes up, takes the knife, cuts his hand, and puts his hand over Erudite and drops blood in there. Yeah, he's not going back to Abnegation tonight. He's going to Erudite, the faction that has been releasing nasty reports about his current faction. He's just leaving. Triss didn't see this coming at all and is very confused on what just happened. And when she locks eyes with him, he just smiles and nods, basically telling her, do what's best for you. So she goes up there, she gets the knife, she cuts her hand, and she's standing there, and she's like, I don't know what to do. She's standing right in between Dauntless and Abnegation because their stones are conveniently right next to each other. And then finally, she goes over to the Dauntless stone and drops the blood in there, and she is a member of Dauntless now. I mean, the story would kind of suck if she was in any other faction because it would be pretty boring and very politically heavy and not fun action-packed, but act shocked, please. The choosing ceremony wraps up. She's standing with Dauntless. She makes eye contact with her parents across the way. Her father does not look happy, but her mother is standing there smiling at her. Her mother's like, my babies are happy, that's fine with me. And we love her for that. This is when Triss now realizes she has no clue what's about to happen. We'll jump right back into the chaos of Triss's life in just a second, but first, let me talk to you about the sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp, and why I think it truly matters. Let's be honest, life doesn't always go as planned, whether it's the day-to-day exhaustion of managing a chronic illness like type 1 diabetes, or something bigger like the car wreck I was in a few years ago. There are moments where life can just start to feel like too much. And it's easy to feel like you're falling behind or like you should be handling everything so much better than you are. Trust me, I felt exactly like that before I tried therapy. I've actually used BetterHelp and it truly helped me. Having somebody who truly listens, asks thoughtful questions, and helps you untangle what's going on inside your head made a much bigger difference than I expected. Therapy gave me the tools that I didn't even know I needed. And that's why I'm so happy to be partnering with BetterHelp today. BetterHelp is an online therapy platform that makes getting started simple and flexible. You just fill out a questionnaire, and then they'll match you with a licensed therapist in as little as a couple days. If the match isn't quite right, you can switch at any time with no extra cost. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3-star rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can feel good about trying. Just click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/Natalie Hoover to get 10% off your first month. Remember, you don't have to do this alone, and BetterHelp is a great first step. Now, let's get back to Triss, who is definitely only going to make good decisions for the rest of this book. She doesn't know what initiation looks like for Dauntless members, so she just starts following the crowd as they head out the doors and start running down the stairs. They're loud, they're in your face. This is the exact opposite to Abnegation that's trying to be invisible to the world. Dauntless is like, we're here! And we're proud! They all make it outside, the train is approaching. One of the other transfers standing next to her is like, are we supposed to jump on the train? All she says is yes, because remember, she's been watching the Dauntless people do this daily for the past 16 years of her life. They start running next to this car, she jumps on and then gets pulled into the door by a transfer from Candor. And then they both look out the train car just in time to witness an erudite boy getting left behind. He just failed initiation like that. He is now factionless. They decide to ignore that and introduce themselves, and this is when we meet Christina. They're talking for a bit during this train ride, and by the time they get settled into this ride, the Dauntless kids just start jumping out. Small thing to mention about where the Dauntless kids are jumping out of right now, they're currently 7 stories up. This is not like on the ground like the last train was where they were jumping on, no. There is a 7-story fall if they fail to jump onto the roof that's a few feet from the train. But you know, just your average everyday commute for a Dauntless member because they're so cool and brave. One of the transfers is like, I'm not doing this. And they try to tell him if he doesn't do this, he's gonna be factionless, but he doesn't listen to them. He is now also factionless. My dog is very upset about this. Beatrice and Christina are like, oh well, he's not coming. So they just take each other's hands and they leap out of the car to the roof together. When they land, it is in a tumble. It is not a nice, graceful landing. They are just rolling through the gravel, which is just such a lovely experience. Then they hear a cry and they see a Dauntless girl looking over the edge of the roof. When Beatrice goes to look over the edge to see what she's yelling at, she sees a dead body on the ground. Not even the Dauntless are safe from the Dauntless activities. And this is the first time she starts to doubt her chances of making it through initiation. One of the Dauntless leaders gets everybody's attention and explains to them they will now be jumping off of this roof. Not where that guy is dead on the ground, but they will be jumping off the roof into a hole. And the transfers have the privilege of going first. Triss very quickly realizes that there's a net at the bottom of this or something like that. They're not just gonna kill everybody who just said they're going to be part of Dauntless. So she's like, all right, I'll go. She takes off this oversized gray overshirt and leaves herself in a tighter fitting t-shirt, which is a very different look for her. There's some catcalling stuff like that. She's not dressed inappropriately.
Hi, editing Natalie. I phrased this poorly. Even if she was wearing something inappropriate, catcalling still not okay. Don't do it.
But seeing somebody from Abnegation do something like this is, not normal. And she just gets up on this ledge and she jumps. She's falling for a couple seconds and then she hits a net. And she's perfectly fine. A few hands are reaching to help her off of this net. She grabs the first one she sees and then proceeds to almost faceplant getting off. Luckily, the guy that grabbed her hand holds her steady by the waist. All she gets out is thank you, because obviously this is a YA book. Of course this man is attractive. And she's like, whoa, attractive person. I don't know what to do. Then they ask her for her name. She just gets out, because Beatrice doesn't sound right anymore. It doesn't sound like a very dauntless name. He just tells her to take her time because she won't get to pick again. And then she finally says, Triss. Then a girl behind him just says, make the announcement for, this is for this guy right here. So he shouts, first jumper, Triss. Then we hear Christina screaming as she falls into this pit. Once all the initiates are down there, Lauren takes all of the Dauntless-born initiates. Where are they? They're right here. Dauntless-born initiates. And then 4 takes all the transfers. While they're walking, he lets them all know that most of the time he works in the control room, but he will be one of their trainers during their initiation. Then he tells all of them his name, and Christina goes, like the number 4, she's from Candor. She doesn't know how to hide what she's thinking yet. And of course, him being the big tough guy he is, he goes, yeah, is that a problem? And no, there's no problem because this man is scary. He could kill me and I would probably say thank you. Then this very intimidating man over here is like, I'm gonna take y'all to the pit. One day you'll learn to love it. Why is he a used car salesman on TV? I'm gonna stop using that voice now. Okay. Anyways, he says he's gonna take them to the pit and they're gonna love it. And Christina did not learn her lesson and she starts snickering and she's like, you call it the pit? What a stupid name. So this guy walks over to her and he's like, yo, if I wanted to hear a smart mouth go off all the time, I would have joined Candor, but I didn't. And that's why I'm here. And you should start to learn that you need to forget your old faction ways. You're a Dauntless member now. And the first thing you're gonna learn here is to keep your mouth shut. Got it? All she can say is, got it. Because again, this man is scary. I don't know why she spoke up a second time. That was stupid. They get to the end of the tunnel they've been walking down, and then he opens the door to the pit. It's just an underground cavern with their cafeteria area, food, shopping, entertainment, all that good stuff. Everything is in this underground cavern that they could ever need. There's also just a bunch of areas where you could pretty easily fall to your death without any railing, because, you know, they're so brave, they don't need that safety precaution. Then he takes all of the class to the chasm, where there is just a river rushing below them, and he's like, don't jump off of there, you'll die. Don't ask me how I know. He didn't jump off of there, but it's pretty, not regular. It happens like once a year. It's like an annual tradition. Yikes. Okay, anyways, he reminds them right here that there is a fine line between bravery and idiocy. I don't think Dauntless knows where the line is, but apparently they know well enough not to jump into the chasm. Then he takes them all back across the pit to the dining room. When they walk in, all the Dauntless members start applauding for them. They are so excited to have more people here. Chris and Christina are looking for a place to sit. They end up sitting next to 4. What a wonderful time. Sit right next to your instructor. Then our girl over here notices the food in the middle of the table and she doesn't recognize this food. It's a luxury. It's a freaking burger. It's a burger. She's never had a burger before in her life. Because if you had a burger once in your life, you would be a very, very selfish human being, and how dare you? I don't understand this faction. Christina is so confused on how this girl has never seen a burger before. 4 just jumps in to explain that stiffs only eat plain food. Then the cafeteria doors open, revealing a young man. 4 explains that this is Eric. He is a Dauntless leader. He's also 18. Dauntless doesn't care about your age, they just care, how dauntless you are. And then Eric over here just walks over to their table to say hello. He just stands there for a second, then asks 4 to introduce him to these 2. He does. And then Eric looks at Tris and he's like, I don't know how long you're gonna last here. My guy, you just met her. Then these 2 go back to talking. She's watching their interaction and she can tell there's some sort of rivalry here of some sort. And of what she can understand, somebody wants to give 4 a better position in Dauntless, but he doesn't want to take it. She can't figure out why, though. Then Eric walks away, and Tris instantly turns to 4 and asks, are y'all friends? He just explains they were in the same transfer class, and Eric transferred from Erudite. When she asks him if he was a transfer too, he just shuts that conversation down. He's not gonna talk about that because he doesn't want to. And he's a scary guy, so he doesn't have to talk about what he doesn't want to talk about. That man is not 18. Did the movie age them up? Is she still 16 in the movie? Because I feel like, for some reason, in my brain, they've always been 18, and he was like 20, and that makes more sense. So movie realm, that's what we're believing. But just imagine a slightly younger 4 over here. Anyways, these 2 proceed to have a little banter back and forth, and it just ends with him saying, careful, Tris. And then he walks away to go talk to some people at another table, and Christina looks over at Tris and she's like, do you have a death wish? Girly Pops, you were messing with the same dude earlier. Twice. Do you also have a death wish? I think both of you do. Then, once dinner is done, there's no more 4. Eric takes over. He takes them to their bunk room. And he explains that he's volunteered to oversee their training. 4's still gonna oversee it, but he's also overseeing it. Then he gives them the overview / some ground rules of how this is all gonna go. He explains that training will be from 8 to 6 every day with a lunch break. And they're free to do whatever they want in the compound after 6 o'clock. But they're only allowed to leave the compound if they're accompanied by another Dauntless member. Not an initiate, a member. And they will also be ranked the same as the Dauntless-born initiates, but they won't be training together for the first little bit. Then another one of the transfers jumps in asking why they're being ranked. He explains this serves 2 purposes. 1, it will tell them who gets first pick at the jobs after all of this is done. And 2, only the top 10 initiates will actually get to join Dauntless. The rest will be kicked out. They will be factionless. And there's 11 Dauntless born and 9 of them. So do the math, that's 20 people. We're losing at least 10 of them. One of the girls cries out that that's not fair. And Eric's like, oh, you want to think that way? See, if you were actually cut out for Dauntless, you wouldn't care that your chances were slimmer. You would be brave enough to just take the chance and still join. So if you're gonna think that way, might as well leave right now. Then he tells her, you chose us, now we get to choose you. Anyways, cut till later that night. They are all in their beds now, and she can hear just crying around the room. The Candor boy that's right next to her is sobbing, and she's just mad at him for not being more quiet while he sobs. This is sweet, he's over here. This is sweet Al, who I have no clue why he joined Dauntless, but he's sobbing in his bunk right now. Not a good look. I mean, everybody else is quietly crying, yes, but come on, man. Now let's get to day 1. First thing they're learning, how to shoot guns, because they're military and police force, so they kind of need to know that. Before they really get into training that morning, though, 4 has a little bit more of a breakdown on how their rankings will be calculated. The first stage will have the least say in their rankings, the second stage will have a little more, and then the last stage, the final stage, stage 3, will have the most sway in their rankings. So if you do bad in stage 1, you can make a big comeback very fast in stage 2 and 3. Stage 1 is just the physical portion. Stage 2 and 3 are the mental portion, overcoming your fears, being a brave person. That's the core of Dauntless right there. It's not just being strong, it's getting to a point where you are just brave and you can do anything and not really question it. Anyways, back to shooting guns. She is not great at it. She's from Abnegation. She's never shot one before. Will, a boy from Erudite, even leans over at one point telling her that statistically she should have hit the target at least once by now. Luckily, this goes over well with her, and they proceed to have a little bit more friendly banter, and she has another person in her corner now. She does finally hit one a couple shots later, and he's like, see, I told you. And Tris now loves shooting so much, it makes her feel powerful. After they're done with shooting practice, it's time for lunch, and now we have our core little group that sticks together for this lunch break of Tris, Will, Christina, and Al. They're all chatting about their days in school and trying to figure out if they ever had classes together or anything like that, because they're not separated from the other factions in school. They just don't really co-mingle. Again, A wonderful starting point for a peaceful society. Now, there are actually a couple of our erudite transfers here, so they're like, Will, why aren't you hanging out with them? And he's like, so they're dating and I don't really want to be a third wheel. And then pan over to that couple over there, they're sitting there making out, and Triss over here, who has never experienced any physical affection or really seen it displayed, is like, do they really have to do that? And the rest of them are like, they're kissing. It's pretty normal. After those comments, she just goes, I guess I'm gonna have to get over that. And she is right. When they get back to training after lunch, they are starting to go over fighting technique. They're not gonna be fighting anybody today, but fighting each other starts tomorrow. So they at least need the basics right now. This is the moment I started to realize how much Fourth Wing is just Divergent with dragons for a bit more of a grown-up audience. If you haven't read Divergent in a while and you've read Fourth Wing, go back. You're gonna be like, oh, this is why I liked it so much. It reminded me of this. These two are just Xaden and Violet in another life, let me tell ya. Honestly, maybe even a little less toxic, which is amazing. I'm just trying to fit in with the rest of the gang here, okay, guys? I'm starting to wonder why I haven't done this for every recap because I feel so much better already. And yeah, don't make fun of my little strands. That don't look that good, but it looks worse if I put them all back, okay? I have a very round face. I need something to frame it. Anyways, back to our little group. They're all punching different punching bags right now when Four comes over to Triss and he's like, so, you don't have any muscle, so during fights, you're going to want to use your elbows and knees because you can put more power behind those. And then he goes over to her and puts his hand on her stomach where her abs are and goes, and make sure you're always tense here. Engage your abs, and puts his hand right here. Again, she's never experienced physical affection of any sort, and she's like, Amanda's touching me. And Four just walks away thinking nothing of this, and she is left breathless. I can't even lie, as a 22-year-old watching the movie, yes, I rewatched the movie as well as read the book, I was giggling. They're really cute. Also, I mean, come on, he's like a childhood crush for all of us, isn't he? This is also a good moment to bring up that I'm not mentioning the differences in the movies that much because there really aren't that many. I finished the book, then I watched the movie, and I was like, oh. I remember that movie not being that good, but it actually held up really well, and I was really impressed. Anyways, they're all done with fighting training now, and now it's time for free period, and they need makeovers, and since they're in Dauntless, she needs eyeliner. As they're doing this whole makeover montage, Christina is putting eyeliner on her, and Triss tells her, it's okay, you can't really make me look pretty because I'm just not that pretty. And she's just so small and tiny and itty bitty and she's so tiny and not pretty. Have you heard of any of our main characters like that? Violet Sorrengail is just Triss in a fantasy setting with a dragon. Now just know, she does this a bunch through the book. She's constantly like, I'm just not like other girls, I'm not pretty. And I'm not gonna mention all of them because they're really annoying and you don't need to go through that. Anyways, they get done with their little makeover session, then they meet up with the boys in the tattoo parlor. When Triss walks in, she instantly realizes Tori is there, the person that did her aptitude test. She tries to ask her if they could talk about, you know, the whole Divergent thing, and Tori's like, no. But she does offer to give her a tattoo, so Triss ends up getting a tattoo day one of being a Dauntless, because what else are you supposed to do? Apparently tattoos are free here. If tattoos were free everywhere, I would also be covered in tattoos. Honestly, she doesn't get enough tattoos in this book if they're free. This is where she gets the 3 flying birds that are right on her collarbone. She gets them because she's wanting them to represent her family that she's having to let go to become a Dauntless, because you don't really get to see your family if you change factions. It's a big downside. Cut to the next day. They get to training and Four announces that one of them will not be fighting today. Guess who isn't fighting today? That's right, Triss, because she's special. And she's so itty bitty tiny. Meanwhile, Christina is freaking out though because she's fighting Molly, a really big transfer who is definitely gonna beat her up. And it's only made worse because Molly is part of this little group with Peter, Drew, and herself. And Christina hates them. But before we get to that fight, Will and Al are up first. At first, they're kind of just going around each other like, oh, all right, who's gonna make the first move? We've never fought anybody before. We don't know what to do. Then Eric starts griping at both of them to actually start the fight. But Al asks before they start, how does this affect our rank? How is it scored? When does the fight end? Eric tells them it ends when one of them is unable to continue. Four jumps in and he's like, whoa, okay, according to Dauntless rules, one of you could also concede the fight. Eric jumps back in going, according to the old rules, the new rules state that no one can concede because a brave man acknowledges the strength of others. I'm sorry, brave men don't get knocked out every day to get CTE, unless you're Rob Gronkowski, I guess. I hope that man's okay. Four and Eric then just stand there staring at each other until one of them yields, and Al's like, okay, so I've been pointing at Peter when I've been pointing at Al. Oh no. Oh no. Anyways, Al's down here. Four and Eric proceed to have this standoff until one of them yields, I guess. I don't know what their plan is. And Al finally speaks up and he's like, hey, this is ridiculous. Why would I beat somebody up that's in my own faction? Will is apparently up for the challenge though, and he's like, oh, you think I'm that easy to beat? Then hit me. Or at least try to. And let me tell you right now, this does not end well for Will. They have their fight. They both get some punches, but Will is knocked out pretty fast by Al. So bad that it kind of looks like Will is dead for a second. Luckily, he's not. He does wake up, but he's definitely concussed. Moving right along now, we have Christina and Molly fighting each other. Now, Ford during this time is taking Will to the infirmary because, again, he just took a beating. He's not doing too well right now. But anyways, these two are fighting and, well, they get a lot of punches on each other, but eventually Christina is just down and getting hit over and over again, and Triss is over there going, please pass out. Black out, please. Please. At one point, Molly is pulling her foot back to kick Christina, who is on the ground already, again. And Christina goes, I've had enough. I'm done. Now, Eric doesn't take this too well, though, because he just told them no one can concede. And then tells her to get up because they're going on a little field trip to the chasm. So class field trip, they all go to the chasm. They're all standing by the railing that's in this one section because the chasm is way too dangerous not to have railing, okay? We only get safety at this one little portion. Anyways, Eric over here just shoves Christina against the railing and tells her to climb over it. And tells her if she can hang over the chasm for 5 minutes, he will forget her cowardice. And if she can't, he's not gonna allow her to continue initiation. So really, her options right now are to be factionless or to possibly die. Now, she did choose Dauntless, so of course she chooses to possibly die. Mind you, she was just beaten up, like on the verge of being knocked out. And he wants her to hold up all of her own body weight for 5 minutes. That's not an easy thing to do. Al and Triss are just over there watching with bated breath as all this goes down, hoping she can hang on for that time. It's going pretty well, but then water from the chasm is spraying up onto her hands, making the surface she is holding onto damp. So then she starts to slip. They start to call out words of encouragement, cheer her on as best they can, while also not getting murdered by Eric. Finally, Eric says the time is up after she's almost fallen to her death like 3 times. Al goes over to help her over the edge, but Eric tells him no, she has to get herself up. Al over here stands up to Eric and tells him no, she did what you told her to do. She's not a coward. And then he pulls Christina up. Triss runs over to them at this point and they're all just sitting there crouching on the ground trying to catch their breath after what just happened. Luckily, after this, nothing else really happens that day, so cut to the next day. Triss wakes up from a nightmare. She goes into the bathroom to wash up because nightmare, you get sweaty. But when she gets back to her bed, she sees spray painted on the mattress itself and on the bedding around it the word stiff over and over and over again. And of course, Peter is just standing there behind it. But he acts like he did nothing wrong and Al comes over to help her clean up. While they're cleaning up, they start talking about what happened yesterday with him knocking out Will, and Al is not dealing with this well at all. He really hates that he did that. But oh well, not much to do about that here because they're in Dauntless, they're brave, they don't have to deal with their problems right now. So let's go to training. They get to training, they see the names on the board on who will be fighting each other today, and Triss is fighting Peter. And I'm sorry, do they want her to die? You're gonna put this self-proclaimed itty-bitty tiny girl against that guy? Miles Teller? Reminder, she hasn't fought an actual person a single time. 1 single time, and you want her to fight him? Christina and Al are just as alarmed as her, and they're like, you know, maybe you just fake passing out early in the fight so you don't die. A couple fights happen before she has to fight Peter, but she is called up to the mat to fight him. Peter, of course, is trying to get her even more mad at him so she makes more mistakes, stuff like that. But all she can focus on over his shoulder is Force standing there within her eyesight. So she decides she's gonna kick Peter in the side. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. He grabs her leg and throws her to the ground. And then the rest of the fight basically goes like that. She gets a couple hits in, but it's really, really bad. At one point during this beatdown, she just sees Force leave the room. And she's like, oh, cool. That's so cool. She eventually gets knocked out, and then she hears somebody shout, "Enough!" Because, they don't want to actually kill her, just a couple concussions. Never hurt anybody. They have absolutely hurt people, but never hurt anybody. Anyways, she eventually actually wakes up, and she is in the hospital wing of Dauntless. Her little group is there, and Christina is sitting on her bed holding an ice pack to her own face as well, and Triss, who is just a marble of bruised colors, asks Christina what happened to her face. And Christina points this out, and Triss goes, "Well, I know what happened to my face." Fun fact, it was actually Will who beat up Christina a little bit, but they're okay. They're the first ones to leave, and then it's just Al and Triss there together. Al fills her in on a lot of what she's missed. Tomorrow they're going on a field trip to the fences to learn about Dauntless jobs, and the train will be here at 8:15. And then he very, very awkwardly compliments her, and she's just thinking, oh no, please. Please, Al cannot like me like that. I cannot do that right now. I am just trying to survive. And also, have you seen him? I'm sorry, sweet baby Al. Read the room. Anyways, she does her best to move on from that and asks him how he's doing again. Again, he's not doing great, but he confesses his plan right now is to lose the rest of the fights because he doesn't want to knock anybody else out. And hopefully, because he beat Will at the start, he won't be too low in the rankings and get cut after the first round of cuts. He eventually leaves her to get a little more rest. She falls asleep there for a little bit, but by the time everybody is in the dorms asleep, she goes back in there as well, because the one thing that's worse than Peter putting her in the hospital at all is her staying in the hospital overnight because of Peter. The next morning, she is woken up by Christina telling her, "It's 8 o'clock, we gotta go." And she's like, "Could you not have woken me up a little bit earlier, please?" Trying to get to the train is not a super fun time for her, shockingly. She's in a lot of pain. Have I mentioned that? Again, bruised all over. And it's not made any better by Al basically lifting her up into the train car as they're running to get it. And that's just embarrassing because she was going to be able to do it by herself. And now he made her look like she wasn't capable of that. Peter tries to start being, Peter, but Four shuts that down real quick, basically saying, "I don't want to listen to y'all yapping the entire time we're on this train. Please shut up." Our little core group gets settled on a slightly longer train ride. They're all kind of talking about random stuff as they go, but they're also talking about how it's weird that there are now guards at the fence when they weren't there a few years ago. Just keep that in mind, that's all. Once they get there, Four starts their little fun field trip day, and he explains unless they're ranked in the top 5, they're probably gonna end up working here. Then one of the initiates asks him what he was ranked in his year. He was ranked number 1. Then Peter asks him why he didn't get a government job because everybody knows those are the best jobs, and he just explains he didn't want one. They stop at one of the gates that's letting an Amity truck in. They work at the farms, they get all the food and bring it in. So they're the only people that really live outside of the fence, but they're inside the fence pretty often as well. One of the Amity boys on this truck actually recognizes Triss. They were childhood friends, and she even tells us they would probably have ended up married if they both stayed in abnegation. Obviously, her childhood friend is like, what's going on in Dauntless? You're not looking too good. Okay. They have a bit of an interesting conversation because, again, her face looks like that. That sounded so mean. But then they part ways when the truck leaves. As the Dauntless guards close the gate, she realizes the lock is on the outside of the fence, which is a little weird because that means you're trying to keep people in normally. So what's going on? Keep that noted. She finds that a little suspicious, and so do I, and so do you probably, because it's a glaring red flag. Four now comes over to her and he goes, "That wasn't your smartest decision talking to that guy." And she goes, "It was a 2-minute conversation." He explains that doesn't make it any better. Then he touches her bruised face and says, "If you learn to attack first, you could probably win fights." Because she's really fast, and if she could start hitting her opponents before they even really know what's going on, yeah, that would help. She snaps back to him, trying to give her actual advice, saying, "Oh, I'm surprised you know that, because you left midway during my first fight." He has to explain to her that wasn't something he wanted to watch. Then the train gets back in, they gotta go. The next day, she's in the ring again, up against a girl named Myra. Now, Myra is really, really bad at fighting, so Triss actually wins this one pretty fast. She makes it through the rest of the day, then finally gets to sit down on her bed when Eric, Four, and the other Dauntless initiates all come storming into the room with flashlights. And of course, these two have to have an awkward little staring contest from across the room because they're secretly in love. We all know this, blah, 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 moving on. They all get told they're going on another field trip in 5 minutes. When they get out to the tracks, they see a bunch of paintball guns. That's right, we're playing games tonight. The train comes, they all go running on. Four has his hand out and of course Triss grabs it and they're like, wow. And then proceed on like normal. Once everybody is on this train, Four starts explaining that they will be playing Capture the Flag tonight. Each team will be a mix of Dauntless-born initiates and transfers, so this is the first time they're really getting to commingle. One team will get off first to hide their flag in one location, and then the second team will do the same just a little later. And they're told to take this very seriously because this is a Dauntless tradition. When one of them asks what they get when they win, Four just tells him, that's not a very Dauntless question. You get to win. Four and Eric are of course here to play as team captains, and they will be dividing up the transfer initiates first. Eric gives Four the first pick, and Four picks Triss, to everybody's shock. But he does, because they're secretly in love. They want to kiss so bad. Eric out loud is questioning this decision, wondering if Four just wants to build a weak team so if he loses he has an excuse. But Four just gives him a non-committal response, and also gets Christina, Drew, and Will. Triss has no clue what his strategy is until halfway through picking the Dauntless-born initiates. Then she realized everybody Four has picked has a very similar build. They're small frames, harder to hit with the paintballs. And most people on Eric's team are big, strong dudes. He got the buffest dudes possible. How many times can I do this arm movement during this? Triss's team is the one to get off second, and this is the first time she jumps out of the train car without just flinging herself on the ground, really, so big improvement. She actually gets to look cool and like run off of it. She's doing great right now. Now it's time for strategy. One of the Dauntless-born girls is trying to get Four to tell them where he hid the flag the year he won, but he's not telling them anything. But then Uriah, one of the Dauntless-born guys, speaks up explaining that his brother won the year he played, and they hid it at the pier. At the carousel there, which offered some more covers, because did I mention these flags glow? They are so bright. Anyways, they all agree to go through this pier since it was a winning spot in the past, but it feels like the other team would know that it was a winning spot in the past, so they would go look there, but you know, fine, they're going. They get to the pier, the Ferris wheel carousel, some other rides are still there. Once their flag is hidden at the carousel, they all get into an argument on what to do next, whether to play a combination of offense and defense, to play all offense, to play all defense. They don't know. Triss is really tired of this conversation though, so she looks over at the giant Ferris wheel and she's like, I need to get to the high ground. And then she just waltzes on over there without telling anybody and starts climbing the Ferris wheel. But little did she know, Four was following her. And he comes up behind her asking her, what are you doing? She explains to him that she's seeking higher ground and he's like, all right, I guess I'm coming too. She tries to convince him she is fine and she can do this by herself, but he continues on climbing with her. As they're climbing, he gets into instructor mode and asks her what she thinks the purpose of this exercise is. You know, this really feels like when summer camps are like, you know who we should hire as our counselors? The people who just graduated summer camp last year. That's the exact same vibe this has. Anyways, he's asking what she thinks the reason for this exercise is. Obviously, this is about strategy. She says that, and then says, also teamwork, and then kind of laughs at herself because Dauntless isn't great at teamwork even though they're the military. What is going on in this world? They talk some more, they keep on climbing, and eventually Four is kind of losing it and he asks, are you even human? I mean, being up this high seriously doesn't bother you? And this is where we learn Four is afraid of heights. At this moment, a gust of wind throws her body weight to the right. Four has to put a hand on her hip to steady her to make sure she doesn't fall to her death. And once again, she's like, he's touching me, oh my gosh, she's so hot. She doesn't care that she almost died. She's breathless because he simply put his hand here. How's a girl to function? Once they get to the platform they've been climbing the ladder to, she asks him how he survived this long in Dauntless with a fear of heights, and he explains he just ignored it. After they sit on this platform for a little bit though, Triss decides they're not up high enough. Now there is no more ladder. She just starts climbing the Ferris wheel. Four clearly isn't excited about this. She tells him he doesn't have to follow her, but of course he does. Eventually she gets up high enough where she can see over all the buildings, and then she sees within a foresty area a bright light that's kind of being covered by the trees, but not enough, obviously. She points this out to Four, and he climbs up behind her, rests his chin on her shoulder, basically, to look at it, and says, oh, I know exactly where that is. Well, you're looking at it, so I would hope so. Triss over here, as we all know by now, physical touch, she doesn't know how to handle it, so she wants Four to back up a bit at this point, and she's like, hey, maybe you should start climbing down. And he gladly does. She follows him down, they're both climbing down, but as that's happening, she puts her foot on one bar, but then the bar just breaks away. There is no more bar, and there's not anywhere else for her to put her foot within reach. So now she's just hanging on the Ferris wheel, calling for Four's help, and he's like, hang on, and then he starts climbing down further. Now, she thought he was gonna climb up and help her, but no, he just keeps going down the Ferris wheel, and she's like, Four? Please don't let me die. But eventually she hears a creaking sound, and then the Ferris wheel starts moving with her hanging on it. As she gets close enough to the ground, she times her jump just right, she jumps off, and she really isn't that injured and lives. This girl really just lived out my worst fear. Ferris wheels and heights. I'm probably just scared of Ferris wheels because they're heights, but me and Four over here are two peas in a pod. Don't put me on high things. I do like tall roller coasters though, but I close my eyes until we start falling to our doom. That's fun. I don't sound mentally stable. Anyways, he rushes over to her, grabbing both of her hands in his, asking if she's all right. Luckily she is, so they go back to the rest of the group. The rest of the group is already kind of mad at them because they just turned on this giant Ferris wheel that is basically a beacon telling the other team, hey, we're right here. Did you know we're right here? But they all calm down once Four explains to them that Tris found the flag and they know how to go get it. So they take the group that is still at the carousel because some other people had already gone off to try to play offense by themselves without knowing where they're going. And our little group goes running off towards the forest to get the flag. There's some paintball fighting with the other team. Our team is doing great over here. They're getting close to the flag, but it's tied up high on a tree, somewhere where Tris won't be able to reach it. So Christina is running to go grab it, but Tris is right behind her and she's like, hey, can I grab the flag so, I get the glory of it since I'm the one who found it? And Christina is like, no, let me have this. You already found the flag tonight. So Christina just grabs the flag and then holds it up and they all win and their team is so happy, yay! Their whole group starts coming over, cheering in victory. Tris is also cheering. She's still happy they won, but a little hurt she didn't get to grab the flag. She is standing off to the side a little bit, so Four comes over to her and tells her, well done. They're all back on the train, and during this train ride, while she's talking to her little group, Uriah and a couple of the Dauntless-born girls actually come over to talk to Tris, and they're like, so you're the one who climbed the Ferris wheel. That's pretty cool. When Tris tries to introduce herself to one of them called Marlene, Marlene goes, no, I know who you are. You were also the first jumper. It's hard to forget the first jumper. They've kind of joined this little group over here now. Uriah squeezes one of the paintballs open at Tris, tries to do it again, and ends up shooting himself in the face with it. Wasn't a great time for him. He tries to do it again, but then ends up spraying himself in the face with the paint, leading to this whole group dying laughing on the train floor. The next day of training, they have knife throwing. Now, this is a skill I read so much about in fantasy books and dystopian books alike that I'm truly delusional enough to think I would just be great at it. Hand me a knife. I can try to throw it. I'll probably hit the target. I won't be hitting the target. But maybe I'll hit the target, and it would be really cool. Have I tried it yet? No, because it's going to be really sad when I try it and I suck. One day, though. One day. I will be very good at this. This will be the skill I have, as well as archery. I want to be a combination of Katniss and Clove. That's all a girl wants in life. Oh, also the last day of stage 1 is tomorrow, but that's not a really big deal. Back to knife throwing. Tris is actually doing pretty good at this. She's the first one to hit the board. We're very proud of her. Go team. We're on her team. After everybody has hit the board multiple times at this point, Al still hasn't. So Eric comes over to pester him about this and asks if he needs glasses or something. But Al just throws another knife and horribly misses. And then Eric tells him to go grab it. People stop throwing knives because, that's the normal thing to do. But Eric goes, did I tell you to stop? Yeah, he wants Al to walk where everybody is throwing knives. Again, they're not really trained. They're just getting the basic skill. They are at sim skill level 1 of knife throwing. And he wants Al to walk in the middle of all of that to get his knife. Al tells him he's not doing that. So Eric tells everybody to stop and then tells Al to go stand in front of the target. And he's gonna have Four throw knives at Al until Al doesn't flinch. Four, in a very nonchalant, calm tone, is like, is this really necessary, man? Bruh, did we really gotta throw knives at this kid? But Tris can tell because of their extra special connection they haven't talked about at all, and maybe they've said 20 words to each other. I don't even know. That might be over-exaggerating it. But anyways, through their extra special connection, she can tell he's actually very tense and stressed right now and doesn't want to throw knives at Al. But he's gonna have to throw knives at Al because Eric said so, and Eric outranks him. As Four is about to throw the first knife, Tris steps in and goes, stop. Any idiot can stand in front of the target and not flinch. You're just bullying us, which, as I recall, is a sign of cowardice. Now, did she kind of eat with that? Absolutely. Is this gonna get her in trouble? Yeah, lots of trouble. Eric tells her, okay, then you go stand in front of the target. And she goes, okay, fine, I will. The rules for her are if she flinches, Al has to take her place. 4 is aiming knives. He's obviously very skilled, so he's missing her on purpose, trying not to kill her right now. He's constantly making little quips throughout all of this, being like, oh, if you flinch, Al will have to take your place, stuff like that. All the time. 4 does at one point with a knife, though, throw it and it clips just a little bit of her ear, and this is where Eric calls it, because she hasn't flinched during any of this. She walks back over to them, and Eric grabs her shoulder and says, I should keep an eye on you, which sounds like a threat coming from him. You know, it's also terrifying because she's trying to hide the secret that she's Divergent from the higher-ups, and he is one of the higher-ups. Everyone else slowly makes their way out of the room except for 4 and Triss. He goes over and asks if her ear is okay, and she just goes, you did that on purpose! He's like, obviously. Obviously, Triss, if I hadn't hit you just that little bit on the ear, you would still be standing there right now. I was helping you. And if I truly wanted to hurt you, I would have done it already. She doesn't know how to respond to this, so she's just standing there, and then he just leaves the room. The next day is the day before visiting day, but there's a little incident where she takes some clothes to change into the bathroom, but then she figures out that she's just too swole now. Do people still say swole? I don't know. But she's just too swole now in her calves, so she can't get her pants up, and she's like, oh, I am so much muscle, my pants don't fit. I gotta buy new ones, but I didn't bring a change in here. So she has to go back out to the open dorm room with just a towel and try to get new pants. But some stuff happens with Peter and the gang, and she ends up losing the towel, running back into the bathroom. It's a really not good time. She was crying. She really had a very bad morning. But it leads to makeover round 2, kind of, but not really. She has to get to training pretty fast. So to training we go. And today she couldn't be more excited for her fight because she is fighting Molly over here that just stole her towel. When they get to their fight, Triss beats the crap out of Molly. She honestly takes it a bit too far. We're all a little concerned after this. There was a lot of aggression in this fight. I don't know if Molly deserved all that. I mean, she's been awful, but Triss got really scary. 4 even has to step up on the mat to stop Triss from kicking Molly, who is already unconscious. He tells her to go take a walk, and she goes, no, I'm fine, and she stays right there. Now cut to the next day. It's now visiting day. They're hoping to see their families. They don't know if they're coming, though. Eric does come in before they leave the dorm room that day, and he's like, look, if your families did come to see you today for some reason, my advice to you is not to seem too attached to them. So it will make it easier for you and them to separate and be in your own factions now. Because they can't sit with us. Then on their way out of the dorm room, again, Eric stops her and tells her he may have underestimated her. That she did really well yesterday. And this is the first time she starts to feel guilty about what she did, because if Eric thinks she did something right, then it was probably the wrong thing to do. But she just tells him, thank you. When she finally gets to the pit, her mother is there waiting for her. Not her dad, though. He didn't come. But the biggest smile goes across her mom's face. They greet each other, wanting to know what's going on in the other person's lives, but her mom tells her to go first today because it's a very special day. But Triss needs to know one thing from her mom before she starts telling her how her experience has been here. She asks if her dad is meeting with Caleb today because he also transferred. She explains that no, he's not, and then calls her father selfish, which is a very big insult to call an abnegation member selfish. So Triss is like, whoa, okay. And then when she asks if her mom is going to go visit Caleb after this, her mom has to explain no, abnegation aren't allowed on the erudite compound at all right now. While they're talking, Triss does notice 4 out of the corner of her eye standing by himself by the railing. And she wonders where his family is, because visiting day isn't just for the transfers, it's for the other members as well. Again, they really just get to see their families for 1 day a year, apparently. What a bizarre world. Faction over family. Hoorah! I don't know what that was. Anyway, she decides to point out 4 to her mother, explaining that that's one of her instructors. Her mom's like, oh, he's handsome. And she's not wrong. Triss is even nodding in agreement without thinking, and her mother just walks right over to 4 to introduce herself as Beatrice's mom. She asks if his name is a nickname. Of course it is, and this again makes Triss wonder what his actual name is. Her mother points out that 4 looks kind of familiar but can't quite place her finger on why, and asks if maybe he's been around the abnegation sector at some point, and he's like, no, I haven't. I actually don't like hanging out with the abnegation members much. And then he leaves them to have their reunion. Her mother and her catch up for a little bit longer, then Christina waves her over to where she's standing with her family. Before they can get over to Christina and her family, though, a shorter woman in Candor colors comes over asking if anybody has seen Albert. Al. Triss apologizes, explaining that she does know him, but she hasn't seen him anywhere. They finally make it over to where Christina is with her family, and Will is also over there with his family, who are erudite. And again, abnegation, erudite, not getting along right now. So of course, Will's sister has to make this snide comment about how she can't believe that he would associate with them. Will tries to get his sister to stop talking about this, but she just keeps going on about how she is a council member's wife. And she runs the volunteering agency that apparently helps the factionless. And again, these people believe that they don't actually use the food they get to feed the factionless. They think that abnegation are taking it. They also think they have extra cars and stuff they're not sharing with anybody else. Natalie, this wonderful mother, just tells her, I'm sorry, I think you're mistaken. Oh, it's like a sovereign bell telling you, bless your heart. It stings, but what are you to say to that? But again, Will's sister is from Erudite. They're very smart, and she keeps going on about how she's not mistaken. She knows they're actually secretly using those supplies. Triss is at it at this point and tells Will's sister to back off or she will punch her in the face. Will's like, whoa, Triss, you're not gonna punch my sister, okay? That's not gonna happen. And Natalie over here just pulls Triss away and she's like, okay, we're going. Ugh. And she starts leading her down all these hallways that Triss hasn't even explored yet until they're in like this hidden corner area. She's asking her mother how she knows her way around the Dauntless compound she has supposedly never been to before. But her mother tells her that she said no questions about her and she meant it. She wants to know how Triss is really doing, what her rankings are like, how the fights are going. Triss is just standing there, still very confused on how her mother would know any of this Dauntless information. Her mother just explains it by saying it's not like it's top secret information, Triss. She explains that she's ranked close to the bottom, and her mother says that's good, they won't be watching her closely. Then she asks her what her aptitude test results actually were. After a minute of Triss weighing her options here, she tells her mom that they were inconclusive. Her mother explains that she thought so because a lot of kids from abnegations actually have those results, meaning they are divergent, and she just tells Triss to stay near the lower end of the rankings and not to draw any attention to herself. Triss needs some clarity. She's getting a little panicky over here, and she asks her mom if this is because she's divergent, and her mom tells her no. Never say those words. When she asks her mother why, her mother says, I can't explain it right now. Then her mom tells her to go talk to Caleb after her initiation is over and tell him to research the simulation serum. Her mother gives her no further explanation, then just tells her to have a piece of cake for her, chocolate was her favorite, and then she leaves. And it finally clicks in Triss's head, her mother was Dauntless before she switched to abnegation. When she gets back to the dorm room, she sees Al just sitting staring at the wall where the rankings normally are posted. She tells him that his mom was here, but he just explains he didn't want to see them. He didn't want to have to explain that his rankings were so low. See, Al's parents actually wanted him to go to Dauntless. Of course, they couldn't outright tell him this. That's kind of against faction code and everything, but they wanted him to be here. His father has always admired Dauntless. And now Al is failing. Obviously, that's not the only reason he chose Dauntless, because he thinks it's important to stand up for people and protect them, and he feels like that's what courage is. But all Dauntless is showing him in training is how to hurt people. And then he starts talking about how he feels braver when he's around her, and how he feels like he could fit in like her. Then he puts his arm over her shoulders, and Trish just goes, eee, no. She gets that sinking feeling that most people know when somebody you don't like that starts showing you obvious signs they like you like that, and you're like, love you as a friend, but no more than that. Please stop. When she leans forward and his arm falls off, he instantly looks embarrassed and he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Remember, these are 16-year-old children. She gets herself together though, and she goes, sorry about what? This doesn't make him feel any better though, and he just gets up and says, I should go. And he's kind of right. Later that evening, they're kind of just talking in general, kind of guessing on how everybody's going to be ranked tomorrow, and then Christina brings up how she could never have a pet dog anymore after the aptitude test, because people who are sorted into Dauntless normally take the knife and have to stab the dog. They all agree that killing the dog was hard. Remember, Triss did not kill this dog. And Christina, being from Candor, the place where they don't lie, they also learn how to read body language really well to tell if somebody is lying. She looks at Triss and she goes, you didn't have to kill the dog, did you? Triss does her best to cover up any signs of fidgeting, anything like that, and she's like, Well, remember, I actually got abnegation because that's what her test results say. Luckily, they're all like, okay. And then they go on to more conversations. Then after dinner, they're all heading back to the dormitory again. And it is time to get their rankings. Four's waiting in there with the blackboard turned towards him so they can't see the rankings yet. He goes over how the scores work. Basically, if you fought a higher ranking opponent and won, then you got more points. If a higher scoring opponent beat somebody else, their score doesn't really change, but they don't lose any points. You also earn points just in general from how you were doing in training because the instructors were watching them the whole time. He does remind them here that stage 2 will be weighed heavier than stage 1 because stage 2 really focuses on them overcoming their cowardice. But it's still pretty hard to rank really high at the end of initiation if you rank low in stage 1. Then he explains that the cuts will be announced tomorrow because they have to combine the Dauntless leaderboard with the transfer leaderboard to see who is getting cut. So he turns around the whiteboard and you've got Edward at 1. He's a really big dude who's just been doing great this whole time. Peter is at 2. Will is 3rd. Christina is 4th. Molly is 5th. Triss is 6th. She really can't believe she's that high, but she is. Then 7th is Drew. 8 is Al, and 9 is Mira. Molly starts going on about how she can't believe she was ranked lower than Christina because she beat Christina in a fight. Molly is the girl that lost to Triss today, and Forge just tells her, we don't look highly on people who lose to lower ranking opponents. So now, Molly turns to Triss letting her know she will pay for this. She's a little worried that she's not even gonna make the cut because you do have 10 Dauntless born that they're still competing for spots with. But Will and Christina come over to assure her she's made it, it's gonna be fine, so they need to go out tonight and celebrate. Al doesn't come with them. It's not looking good for Al, so he just stays in his bed and sulks. They go out, have a great time, then later that night, she's just sitting in her bed. She's like, my mother is Dauntless, and she told me to tell my brother to research simulation serums. What does this all mean? It clearly has something to do with me being a Divergent. I don't know what's going on. That's her inner monologue, not mine. I know what's going on because I read the whole book and I wrote it all down for you. Are you proud? Then she starts hearing some shuffling from across the room. Then she hears a scream that is blood curdling. Someone is shouting for someone to turn on the lights, and Triss is slowly creeping over to where the noise was from, and when she gets there and the lights get turned on, she sees Edward with a knife in his eyeball. A knife in his eyeball. Most people start to freak out. Triss just tells Edward to lie back down, but he keeps screaming, telling her to get it out, and she's like, yeah, can't do that. We're gonna let the nurse do that. You just stay here. It's gonna be all good. You just don't have an eye. As she looks over at the rest of the dorm, she sees that the only 2 people that are missing are Drew and Peter. And Peter didn't like being number 2, so he stabbed number 1 in the eyeball. They get Edward to the infirmary. Triss is there cleaning up the blood. Christina is getting her towels to help out that way. Christina is asking if they should tell someone, but Triss points out that it's very unlikely that the Dauntless leaders would do anything about this. Let's take a quick second to remember they just had all of them beat each other up until they had concussions, giving all of them CTE most likely. So yeah, I don't think they're gonna care about this. So the rest of the night, big shocker, no one really sleeps that much, and then the next day, Will actually says he wished they had training today because it's one of their days off in between the stages, because it would just give them something normal to do and not just focus on the guy who got stabbed in the eye. Our little group starts talking about how it's so stupid how in any other faction it would be considered brave to stand up to people like Peter and Drew, but in the faction of bravery, it would do nothing to tell anybody about this. They would just be like, oh, well, that's Dauntless. This is when Will brings up the old Dauntless manifesto. They still technically go by, but it was written a long time ago, so it's kind of been forgotten. As you can tell once I tell you what it is. It says, we believe in ordinary acts of bravery and the courage that drives one person to stand up for others. But now Dauntless has gone so far away from that. When she gets back to the dormitory later that day, she sees that Edward's and Mira's bunks are empty. They both just decided to quit before the cuts were even announced. And then Christina has already learned and informs Triss that 2 of the other Dauntless-born were cut, so our little core group is safe for now. She's sitting in a random hallway around lunchtime that day when Uriah comes up, and he's like, hey, you doing all right? She just says it was a rough night, and he's like, yeah, I heard about Edward and getting stabbed in the eye. That sucks. Do you want to get out of here for a bit? Me and the other Dauntless-born initiates are gonna go do this tradition that we do every year. And they probably won't even notice she's there, so she can tag along. When she asks him what they're gonna be doing, he just says, something dangerous. Obviously, we knew that at least. They catch up with the group of Dauntless-borns, and instantly one of them is like, what is she doing here? Safe to say they actually noticed. Uriah's just like, she just had to watch somebody get stabbed in the eye, let her join, and then nobody else really says anything to her. So they all hop on a train, go to this really, really tall building that's basically abandoned, and then get on an elevator in there to go to the very tippity top floor. There are some older Dauntless here as well that are partaking in all of this, but 4 is not one of them, and she is very sad when she finds that out. But Zeke, Uriah's older brother, is there to help them all out. See, on the top of this building, there's this zip line contraption that's like one of those slingshot zip lines where you're just laying on your stomach and you go, woo! Yeah, that's what they're about to do off of this 100-story tall building. It'll be fine! Anyways, all the older people from Dauntless start going first, and then the transfers start to go. And when Triss goes, she loves it. This is her favorite thing now. And when she gets down to the very bottom, the other Dauntless members are waiting down there to catch her with their arms. Basically, she just needs to shimmy her way out of there and fall and hope they catch her. They do, and when one of the Dauntless asks her how it was, all she does is ask when she can go again. Uriah is the next person to come down, and he comes down flailing his arms and screaming. This boy is terrified. And again, all the Dauntless that are already down there go over to catch him, including Triss this time. And this is where one of the Dauntless members named Shauna, who has been talking to Triss a little bit throughout the day, finally says, "I guess we can't call you Stiff anymore, huh?" She's been accepted into the group. A little bit later, they all make it back to the Dauntless compound. She splits up from all of them, but they all came in laughing, having a great time. But now she's back with her little group of Christina, Will, and Al. She explains to Christina what happened, how Uriah saw her in the hallway, and then was like, come on, they won't even notice, and then they notice. And she said it was an all right time. She's trying to downplay it so they don't feel too bad on missing out. And she really tries to emphasize the point that they didn't want her to go. Christina has eyeballs though, and she points out that they may have not wanted her to go then, but they sure do like her now. All she can do is agree to this because anything else would just be a very obvious lie. They start filling her in about what they have gotten up to the rest of the day that she's been out. But all she can think about is this is the first time she's truly been eager to join Dauntless. She truly wants to be one of them now because she just had the best experience of her life. So now, all she has to do is get through initiation. Which leads us to stage 2. The Dauntless-born and transfers are all right now just sitting in a dark hallway, waiting to go in a random room. That's what stage 2 is so far. We learn that Uriah is the #1 rank in the Dauntless-born, and then some of the transfer students start making some comments of how it's a little unfair how some of the Dauntless students get to basically train for this their entire lives, but he just points out that, yeah, they get to train for stage 1, but they don't know what's about to happen in stage 2. They're going in as blind as the rest of them. Shortly after all of this, Triss is called into the random room. And when she walks into this room, she instantly starts to panic because it looks so similar to the room that the aptitude test is in. And she's supposed to be hiding that she's Divergent. When she asks For, who is running all of this, what this simulation will be, he explains that this simulation will take her through her worst fears. It's designed to show them how to overcome their fears. Basically, the way to get past the simulation is to calm their heart rate down and calm their breathing as well. Showing the simulation that once again, their emotions are under their control. She's wondering how this is all gonna work though because there's no wires hooked up to her like there were for the aptitude test, and he explains the serum's a little different for this one. It has like micro transmitters that get injected to her, and then it can read stuff from her brain, and then he has wires he attaches to himself so he can see what she sees, but she doesn't need any wires. It's all very confusing science-y dystopian stuff that we don't really need to get into. She's gonna face her worst fears in a simulation thingy, okay? So without any further ado, let's get into this simulation and hope Triss doesn't reveal herself as a Divergent instantly. When she gets in there, she's standing in a field with grass up to her waist. And then there's smoke in the distance, and also a bird comes and lands on her shoulder. She tries to get this bird off of her shoulder, but it just digs its little talons in further. And when she looks back up at the sky, she just sees a flock of crows coming at her now, and they start swarming around her, pecking at her, clawing at her. It is awful. She goes and lays down on the ground. She is full on panicking right now because this is terrifying. They are going into the ground, trying to get under to get at the skin that she's trying to protect by laying on the ground. At this point, she is sobbing, crying out for help. And the only thing she can really think is, I'm dying. Then she remembers she's in a simulation, and she can get out of this by calming down. So she lays herself flat on the ground now, slowly relaxing herself muscle by muscle, letting the crows peck at her. And when she opens her eyes again, she's back in the chair. Then she screams and starts shaking her body to get the imaginary birds off of herself, and then curls up and starts crying again, because again, horrifying. For goes over, touches her shoulder, like, you all right? But she just flings him off of her and says, don't touch me, and continues to cry. He just tells her it's over as his hand like awkwardly strokes her hair. Then he tells her, I'm gonna take you back to your dorm, okay? But she tells him no, because the others can't see her like this. And she tries to tell him she doesn't need his help, but she's trembling too much to finish that sentence. So all he says to that is nonsense. They start walking down the hall together and she's asking him why he would do this to her, and she didn't know this would happen when she chose Dauntless. He goes, "You didn't think you would have to overcome your cowardice to be in Dauntless?" She does have a valid point that in real life she wouldn't be getting pecked to death by crows. Fair enough. She starts crying again after saying this and then just softly says, "I want to go home," but she knows that's not a real option. She just wants some comfort right now. He looks at her with no sympathy in his eyes, explaining that everybody needs to learn to overcome their fears, and if she can't do that, then she should just get out of here because we, as in Dauntless, won't want her. She starts to go on about how she's trying to overcome her fears, but she feels like she's failing. This is when he explains to her she was in there for 3 minutes. That's it. She felt like she was in there way longer. And she got out of there a whole 3 minutes faster than any other initiate. So whatever she isn't a failure. And then tells her that tomorrow she'll be better at this because, yeah, they're doing this again tomorrow. This is her new life. Then she decides to ask him what his first simulation had in it. And he explains it wasn't a what, it was a who. And he's still not quite over that fear. Sometimes they never really go away. You just have to learn how to work through them. Then he explains the fears she has in the simulation aren't always what the fears actually are. She's not just afraid of crows. It's symbolizing something else. She needs to work that out and figure out what it is. And during this time while they're talking, she decides to step closer to him because she wants to be closer to him. That's why. And then they're both leaning against the wall, really close to each other. Ooh la la. Then she admits that she didn't realize that becoming a member of Dauntless would be so difficult. Cool. Their mode of transportation is jumping off of trains. What did you think it was like in here? Rainbow and candies? No! But Ford does explain it wasn't always like this, beating people up and going through all of this all the time. But then the leadership changed a few years ago and everything has changed. They're now more competitive and brutal. And of course, they're making their next protege, Eric, over here, which will just make things even worse, honestly. But we need to remember something. Eric was second in his class. 4 was ranked first. 4 could have Eric's job right now. So there will always be a little bit of jealousy because he was technically the first pick. The only reason he has his job is because 4 didn't want it. She starts to pull herself together, then she asks if she looks like she's been crying. He leans in, takes a closer look at her and goes, "No, Tris. You look tough as nails." Sometimes you say things out loud and you realize how much worse they are said out loud when, instead of just reading it on a book page. There are so many things books can get away with saying that movies, human beings cannot. For some reason, it's a completely different vibe on the page, but yikes. She's tough as nails. Now, when she gets back to the dorm room, she sees the Dauntless Born and the transfers all crowded around Peter, who is holding a piece of paper in his hands. Now, this paper holds a report about abnegation written by Erudite, about how abnegation must be doing something to their children for so many transfers to be from that faction. And Molly even gave a statement to the paper about how Tris will cry out in her sleep for her dad not to hit her. Tris doesn't actually do that. So this is Molly's revenge for Tris beating her in a fight. She walks up to the group and she goes, "What?" Slowly, this group turns around to her with a variety of expressions, but Peter just has this big old smile on his face. She asks him for the paper, but he goes, "I'm not done reading," and continues on reading more and more reports about how corrupt abnegation is. When she goes over to try to grab it out of his hands, he just lifts it high up in the air out of her reach, so she decides to go right up to him and then dig her heel into his toes. He drops the paper because that hurts a lot. And then Tris throws herself at Molly, screaming, "That is my father! That's my father you're talking about!" Will has to pull her off of her and take her out of the dorm room. And she's like, "What? You think I couldn't take her?" And he's like, "No, I just didn't want you to start a brawl in the dorm. You need to calm down." She's like, "Calm down? That's my family they're talking about in there. My faction." He goes, "No, that is not your faction anymore. It's your old faction. You might as well just ignore what they're saying, because you can't do anything about it." But she just keeps going on about how Erudite is trying to overthrow the entire government, and he assures her that that is not what they want. They're just arrogant, and that's why he left them. They're about to get in a fight together when Christina comes out and she's like, my turn to get a tattoo. So they just join her and Al and all go back to that tattoo parlor because that's the hangout spot for the teens, apparently. While they're there, Triss also ends up getting a tattoo of the Dauntless seal. They're all walking around the pit. Christina and Al are a little further ahead with Al giving Christina a piggyback ride, so Will and Triss are kind of talking again. They start talking about the fear simulation today, and when he asks her how hers went, she just says, too many crows. He just laughs and says, too much acid. Then he starts getting into this nitty-gritty on how the serum actually works. He stops himself going, I'm sorry, that was very erudite of me. Then she looks over to the railing and she sees Four standing there with a group of people. He's also holding a bottle, which she might suggest that he not be standing right next to the railing if he's holding that type of bottle. Will also sees him and points out, uh-oh, instructor. I don't think that's what Triss is thinking, but okay. Then Four looks over to them and he sees Triss and he goes, Triss! Buddy, you're her instructor. Let's, please. Anyways, she goes walking over now. He comes and meets them and he's like, you look different. She points out that so does he, and then asks what he's doing. He explains that he's just flirting with death because he's drinking near the chasm. It's probably not a good idea, but he knows that and he just proceeds to do it anyways. Remember that fine line he was talking about between bravery and idiocy? I think he's on the idiocy side, by a lot. He sees her tattoos and points out that he didn't know she had any. And goes on about how he would ask her to hang out, but she's not really supposed to see him like this since he is her instructor. She goes, oh yeah, drunk? He goes, no, real, I guess. And then she just tells him, I'll pretend I didn't see you then. Yes, this boy is a mess right now. He goes in for this hug and then says, nice to see you, right next to her ear, and also says, you look good, Triss. She pushes him away a little bit and just goes, yeah, do me a favor and don't stand right next to the chasm, please. He tells her, of course, and then winks at her. No. He's doing really good keeping his crush a secret. He's doing so good. She can't help but smile as he walks away, and Will's just standing there like, what just happened? Then Al just comes sprinting over and throws her over his shoulder and goes to the dining room saying that she looked like she could use some help. She just waves at Four as she's carried away and the whole group is like, what was that about? Triss, what's going on? She just shakes her head and she's like, he's just drunk and I'm only grinning ear to ear because it's funny to see him that way. Will is the only one to speak up once she sat down from Al's shoulder to say, well, it couldn't be, but she elbows him in the side before he is able to get any more of that sentence out. Now fast forward to a couple days later, we are back in the simulation room. She is trying to calm herself down before she goes back into it. Four is reminding her it's just a simulation, but she's having nightmares about this every night. Her nails are bitten down to the nail bed. She's not doing too great, but honestly, she's faring better than a lot of the other Dauntless initiates right now because they're really not doing good. Like, people aren't sleeping because of this. But she closes her eyes and into the simulation she goes. She's just surrounded by darkness this time. There's no field, no crows, no anything like that. Then some lights come on and she sees the face of Peter and the other initiates around her. They're all laughing at her, stuff like that. Then she realizes she's in a glass box and now her feet are wet and the water is slowly rising. She is pounding on the glass, yelling, "Let me out!" But no one's helping her. They just continue to laugh. As the water continues to rise quicker and quicker, she tells herself she needs to calm down and focus. At this point, she's floating towards the top, takes one last breath, and then goes under the water. She reminds herself that this is just a simulation. Her brain is controlling it. So, she should be able to get out of this glass. And this time, when she hits the glass, she sees a crack. And then she kicks at the wall, and the pane completely shatters. Water goes everywhere, throwing her out with it, and she's finally able to breathe air in this fake simulation. And then she wakes up gasping for air in real life, back in the chair. Four asks her, "How did you manage to break the glass?" She explains that she doesn't know, she just did it. He helps her up, then grabs her by the elbow, half leading, half dragging her out of that room to the hallway. They walk down, and then he stops abruptly, turning to her, still holding her arm, and just stares at her in the silence. She asks, "What?" And he just says, "You're Divergent." She's just staring at him, having no clue what to say now, so eventually she gets out, what's Divergent?" He tells her not to play stupid. He suspected it the last time, but this time confirmed it. He's going to delete the footage, but she needs to learn how to hide this or she's gonna end up at the bottom of the chasm. And then he just leaves her. She pushes off the wall and she knows she needs more answers about what is going on. So she goes to the person she knows will have those answers. Tori. Tori sees her at the tattoo parlor and just says, let's go to the back. Tori knows the time has come. She has to tell her more about what Divergent is. Triss explains to her that the simulations are going a little too well and she needs help understanding what her brain is doing differently. Tori does her best to explain that someone who has divergence is able to realize they are in a simulation when others aren't. So they are able to just manipulate the simulation or completely shut it down. And people who have this tend to die. Yeah. Triss asks her, am I just supposed to accept that I'm gonna die? She tells her, no, not necessarily. I deleted your aptitude test results and I manually entered them. But if they find out, they will kill you. She tries to brush this off and she's like, they don't kill people here, Tori. Come on, Tori, you're being crazy. Tori goes, oh, you really think so? Because I had a brother who was divergent and he ended up at the bottom of the chasm. They claim he did it himself, but I knew my brother. He didn't do that himself. He was murdered. She then asks how many people know about divergence. Tori explains some people in charge, those who have it, or those who have second-hand contact with it being related to somebody who has it. Then they start to theorize on why the Dauntless leaders would have a problem with her being divergent and being able to manipulate just the simulation. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But the only thing they can come up with right now is that it must be a symptom of them being able to do something else that the Dauntless doesn't want. Tori just leaves Triss with, be careful. Now cut to 4 days later. During that time, there has been 2 more articles released about abnegation from erudites. And she also faced more simulation fears. One, she was tied to a stake and Peter lit a fire beneath her feet. Another one, she was drowning again, but this time in the middle of an ocean. Fun change of scenery. And another, she watched her family slowly bleed to death. That one's super fun. And in the last one, she was held at gunpoint to shoot her own family. Again, super fun. Super fun simulations she's going through. Oh no. We catch up with her after her simulation today, which was again her being forced to shoot her own family. 4 is of course there to comfort her after she goes through the simulation, and she's wondering if maybe he's divergent too. And then she's also wondering why he distracts her so easily when all she should be focusing on right now is getting through initiation. It's because he's hot, Triss. That's why. And when she gets back to the dormitory, she has a wonderful surprise. Eric is standing in the middle of everybody with the chalkboard turned away from them. They're getting to find out some middle ground rankings. It's not the end of stage 2, but they're just getting to find out where they're placed right now. And when Eric turns this board around, her name is at the very top. She is number 1. Peter is number 2. Christina and Will are at 4 and 6. But then she looks at the average times of everybody's simulation compared to hers. Even Peter, who is supposedly right behind hers, his is an average time of 8 minutes, and hers is 2 minutes 45 seconds. Will just tells her, nice job, Triss. And then they see Al's name at the very bottom. Peter starts walking back over to his bunk, but at the very last second turns, grabs Triss, and slams her into the wall, telling her that he won't be outranked by a stiff and asks how she's doing it. And then he pulls her forward from the wall and slams her back into the wall. Will goes over, grabs Peter, and says, only a coward bullies a little girl. Peter points out, she isn't a little girl. She's ranked first in Dauntless. She just knows how to manipulate people so they see her as a weakling. Then he storms out of the dormitory. He is done. Will just turns to Triss asking if what Peter said was true. Triss is like, dude, what? No! And is wondering how she would even be doing that and explains she's just doing the best she can. Like everybody else here. But he just can't seem to drop it. She can tell even when they stop talking, he still doesn't believe her. Christina tells Will to not be an idiot because Triss isn't acting. Then they both head out of the dormitory together and Triss goes to check on Al. She asks if he's all right. He says, sure, but obviously that's a lie. She just does her best to reassure him that stage 2 isn't over yet. He still has time to improve his rank. He starts getting really annoyed with her though, saying, stop pretending like this isn't easy for you. She tries to be like, it's not easy for me. It's hard like it is for the rest of you. He goes, stop lying to me. It won't make me feel any better. He just tells her that he wants to be alone as tears start to fall from his eyes. She knows that leaving Al right now isn't her best idea, but she can't stop herself from doing it. So she winds up sitting in the same abandoned hallway when once again, Uriah comes jogging up with a couple other Dauntless born, and he goes, hey, heard you were ranked number 1, figured your friends wouldn't be in a congratulatory mood, so I figured we would come find you because we're gonna try to shoot a muffin off this girl's head. So they go and do exactly that. They use a gun with plastic bullets. It would still hurt, but she wouldn't die at least. But there's still gotta be some chance of injury because Dauntless. And then 4 and Zeke, Uriah's older brother, find them in there. And they're like, yo, you're not supposed to be in here. Their whole group starts to leave, but 4 stops Triss and tells her to wait a second. He goes, You belong here. You belong with us. You know that, right? You just have to hold on for a little longer, then it will be okay. Then he starts to look embarrassed about what he just said. And she decides now is the time to make a little bit of a move, so she takes his hand. And they stare at each other for a second, and then she runs away to catch back up with Uriah and the rest of the gang. That night, back in the dorm, she's having a hard time falling asleep because she's trying to figure out a way to patch her relationship with her friends. Because they all kind of think she's manipulating them, or this is all really easy for her at this point, and it's not, but she doesn't know how to prove that to them. So she gets up to go and get water. This leads her into the hallway where she starts to hear some voices. One of them is Eric. Another one is a female voice she doesn't quite recognize. Eric is telling this woman that there hasn't been any signs of it. The woman starts to go on that they wouldn't have seen much of it yet. Combat training shows them nothing. The simulations, however, show them who the Divergent rebels are. And they'll have to examine the footage of all the simulations to make sure they didn't miss anything. And then she reminds him that his first priority is always to catch Divergents. Then someone grabs Triss from behind, and before she can get a scream out, her mouth is covered. She bites down on this hand as hard as possible, hears somebody scream, then hears somebody else say shut up and keep her mouth covered. It's Peter. And then they put a blindfold over her. Whoever is holding her starts to move, and she's trying to figure out who has her, how to get out of here, and then she realizes the soap scent is very familiar. It's the scent that always surrounds Al's bunk. They keep on moving, and eventually she hears the sound of the chasm. She knows exactly what their plan is now. She is doing everything to get out of their grasp at this point, just repeating to herself that she will survive until tomorrow. Violet Sorrengail, I will not die today. Again, just so many comparisons I could make. Did Rebecca Yarros just read this book and go, what if we added dragons? I'm not mad about it. Then she gets pushed up against the railing on the chasm. Some other inappropriate stuff proceeds to happen. It's not the worst case scenario, but it is still bad. I know there's a lot of sensitive topics in this book. This is just one that isn't necessary really for me to cover, so I'm gonna tread on it very lightly. Al, though, is the one to tell the other boys to stop that. She takes this time to thrash again, and she slips out of his grasp onto the ground. Then she bites down hard on the first hand she can find and hears a scream. And then something hits her hard in the head. It would probably result in her passing out, but she has so much adrenaline going through her right now. Then she gets thrown to the ground, then somebody kicks her, then her head gets slammed into the ground. She screams and starts to feel dizzy, but she has enough time to get her blindfold off. She grabs the railing, pulling herself up, getting ready to fight, but Peter grabs her by the neck and lifts her off the ground. She tries to kick at him, but she's too short to reach him, and her lungs are burning at this point. She then hears a shout, and she's released. Nothing is clear in her vision right now. She sees somebody on the pit floor. Drew is screaming. Then she hears more thumps and kicks and groans, and after blinking a few more times, she gets her vision clear enough to finally see a face. Thor has come to rescue her. He picks her up, gathers her into his arms. She just closes her eyes, and when she opens them next, she's in a room she doesn't recognize. But she can hear running water, like from a faucet, not the chasm. She's not there anymore. When she looks around, she sees that Thor is in the bathroom washing his hands, and the water is turning red with the blood that was on them. Then he comes back into the room, grabs some ice from the fridge, and heads over to her. She's like, oh, should I pretend to be asleep? But he's already seen her awake, so it's too late for that. She goes, your hands, and he tells her, my hands are none of your concern, because this girl, once again, got beat up real bad. He leans over her, putting the ice pack over her head, and before she can even think about what she's doing, again, she just went through more head trauma after she's already been through more than anybody should go through in that short amount of time. So she reaches up and touches the cut on his lip. He assures her that she's okay, and then explains that he was coming back from the control room that evening and heard her scream. When she asks what he did to them, he explains that he took Drew to the infirmary about a half an hour ago, and Al and Peter ran away. They have claimed that they were only trying to scare her, but obviously that's a lie. Peter has already stabbed somebody in the eye. We really think he wouldn't throw somebody off the chasm. They talk a little more, and then he tells her that he could report this, but she doesn't want him to, because she doesn't want them to think she's scared of them. And then asks for his help to sit up, because that's how beat up she is. She tries to hide the pain she feels while sitting up, and he tells her, you don't have to hide your pain, it's just me here. And she just starts to let the tears flow out of her eyes. Thor advises her to now rely on her transfer friends. And she tries to say something about Al, and this just breaks her even more, and sobs start to come out of her body. But Thor, oh, I love this part so much. Thor explains to her that Al wanted her to be a weak, timid girl that he could help. He hurt her because her strength made him feel weak. He is a coward. and then has to advise her to be vulnerable with the people around her because this will make the rest of her friends less jealous of her, and it will also offer her a little more protection again. He knows that tomorrow she is going to want to march into breakfast to show they did not harm her pride, but what she needs to do instead is go in with her head down. Act scared of them. Show that something actually gets under her skin and scares her. But she absolutely hates this idea and kind of explains what else happened besides just getting beat up. Sweet 4 is over there, just like, I literally hate myself for telling you this, but you still need to go in with your head down. But when you get the opportunity, ruin them. And then he touches her cheek with his hand, and it's just, all she has to say to that is, you're a little scary, 4, but he tells her not to call him that anymore, meaning his name, 4. And when she asks, what am I supposed to call you? He tells her nothing. Brother, what do you mean? Is she just supposed to say, hey dude, hey guy over there, hey dude, that saved my life, can you help me? If you don't want her to call you 4, give her a different name at least. What do you want? Tris actually ends up staying in his room that night, but there's no one bed scene because he sleeps on the floor. Boo, I know. So many good one bed scenes ruined by a floor. Put them in air. I'm not asking for anything crazy. I'm just asking for them to be cute and accidentally be cuddling in the morning. That's all a girl wants. As she is lying there though, she's just listening to him breathe and she admits to herself that she does like him. Baby girl, we all knew that. Everybody in the world knew that. I think every Dauntless member probably knows that at this point. I'm glad you finally caught up though. When she wakes up the next day, 4 is already up. He's in the shower, obviously, by the running water in there. So she goes over to the mirror that she has to stand on her tippy toes in to barely see her face. No, I'm not making that up. That's a real thing they put in the book, that she had to be on her tippy toes and she could barely see in the mirror. How high up is this man's mirror? Anyway, she puts her hair up and he comes over and he's like, your head feeling all right? Let me touch your cheek because I just want to touch your face. She's like, yeah, I'm all right. Then they proceed to have a pretty awkward conversation, honestly, and then they head to the cafeteria separately. So he goes first, and then she walks in, as discussed yesterday, with her head down, showing her injuries, looking like a hurt dog. She just slides in the seat next to Christina and Will, and they're like, what happened to you? You don't look good. All she does is look over at the table that Peter is sitting at, and says, Peter, Drew, it takes her a second to get out, and Al. They ask her if she's all right, and she gives them a very honest answer of, not really. They start talking about how she needs to speak up about this. It's not fair. 3 against 1. And Christina's like, oh yeah, Peter's all about fairness. He definitely didn't stab somebody in the eye earlier this year. And then Drew comes shuffling in to the cafeteria, and they say that calling him bruised would be an understatement. This man looks like he was hit by a truck, but it was just 4 multiple times. When these two ask her if she did that, she goes, no, somebody else did. I don't know who though. And this is when it clicks that they were trying to kill her last night to these two. It wasn't just them attacking her. They were trying to end her. She knows that they need to do something about this, but beating them up won't do anything in the long run. What they need to do is try to edge them out of the rankings, get them kicked out of Dauntless, make them factionless. Before they can talk anymore, 4 gets up and says that the transfers need to go with him because they're doing something different today. As they get up to leave, Uriah tells Tris to be careful, and these two say, don't worry, we'll protect her. They are back on her side once again. And as they're walking out of the dining hall, Christina takes this time to apologize for taking the flag during Capture the Flag when Tris was the one who found it. And I just love this moment because it wasn't like she did anything horribly wrong, but she knows it wasn't right, and it took her a while to come to the fact that that wasn't the right thing to do, but she does say I'm sorry, and that's what matters. And she meant it. That's actually what matters. You have to mean you're sorry when you say you're sorry. I'm sorry, why am I talking to you like a 5-year-old? I don't know. I don't know. They all make up now, and their little trio is back together. Sans Al. He's not part of this group anymore. They're all walking and 4 turns to look back at the group and he sees Drew lagging behind because Drew is so incredibly hurt, but he's still trying to keep up. And 4 goes, come on Drew, it's not that hard. Catch up. And then he locks eyes with Tris after saying this and he sees that Tris is holding Will's arm. And dare she say he looked jealous? He leads them to this random room and starts to explain to them that today they will be going through a different type of simulation. They'll still be going through their fears, stuff like that, but this time they will all know they're in a simulation. It won't just be Trish. She doesn't really have to hide that she's divergent at this point, but it will be easier for her at this point because she already has practice manipulating the simulations. Okay. He also explains that the number of fears they will have in what they call the fear landscape will vary from person. Some people can have as little as 7 and some people can have like 15 and above. It varies on how many fears you have. And then goes over that next week they will go through their fear landscape in front of a panel of Dauntless leaders, and this will decide their rankings for stage 3. And basically decide who gets to make it into Dauntless and who is now factionless. Peter, for some reason, decides to speak up right now. Mind you, he knows Four saw him. He knows Four is pissed off, but no, he still speaks up and he's like, I don't really think it's fair because what if somebody doesn't have as many fears as another person? Four clocks this man so fast and says, oh, you want to talk about fairness? I mean, I do understand why you're worried because the events of last night definitely prove that you're a coward. We all now know you're afraid of a short, skinny girl from abnegation. And he has a smile on his face as he says all this. Later that day, when they get back to the dorms, Al is there, and he comes right over to Tris asking if they can talk. Will is the first one to speak up, going, are you kidding me? No! You don't get to come near her ever again. He just tries to assure them that he doesn't want to hurt her and is trying to beg for their forgiveness. She knows that deep down inside of her, there is a merciful person there that would forgive him, but that person is not here right now. She tells him, stay away from me, never come near me again, and if you do, I promise I will kill you. You coward. Gonna put a trigger warning here, should be on the screen, it'll give you a timestamp if you don't want to go through this part. Okay? That night, Tris is woken up from her sleep by Christina saying, it's Al, come on. They go to the pit and they see a group gathered by the chasm. And they see 2 men standing next to it, pulling something up. And this turns out to be Al. Tris basically starts to have a panic attack and sinks down to the ground because all she can think is that this is her fault. She should have known he would have done this. Christina sinks down with her, but then she pulls her arm away from Christina and runs out of there. She ends up running directly to Tori, who hands her a steaming cup of peppermint tea. She knows it's not really going to help with what she's processing right now, but it will give her just the tiniest bit of comfort. Tori gives her the best advice she can on how to move through this. It won't ever go away, but she needs to learn how to live with it, basically. After they've talked for a little bit, Tris goes to find her group of people. And of course, Molly is there talking about her dad again. Molly, read the room now, it's not the time. Now Tris is over today already, so she just turns around to Molly and punches her in the jaw. Molly lunges at her, but Will grabs her and tells her to stop it, both of them. And now, Eric comes on the stage to give a speech about Al. And he starts to call Al brave for leaping into the unknown. And Tris is standing there like, what do you mean brave? They're almost praising him for what he did. Then they basically dub him Albert the Courageous. And people are chanting his name. She can't wrap her head around any of this being courageous, and she runs off again. She's thinking if he was courageous, he would have admitted his weakness. And he would have just left Dauntless no matter what shame it would have brought to him and his family. But he had too much pride, and that's what killed him. Of course, there are so many nuances, and this is just from Tris's POV, and there's so much more we could really dive into this, but I like to keep it as light as possible on this channel while covering dystopian books that get into really heavy topics. I know, it's a fun balance. It's a really fun balance I have on this channel. And we now have our first death of a character on the whiteboard. And yes, I said first, because it's about to get a lot more intense here in just a little bit, guys. Buckle your seatbelts, prepare for the ride if you haven't read this story or watched the movie before. It will always shock me that there are people that choose me to get them through a very popular form of media for the first time, but I really do appreciate y'all, and I would love to have that experience, because this seems like the most insane way to learn about anything. Four eventually finds her, and she starts ranting about everything that has happened and how they were talking about him, and he's like, what did you want them to say? He's already dead. She points out it's not about him. It's about the other people watching this speech thinking if they throw themselves off into the chasm, they'll be praised for it. Then she says that this would have never happened in abnegation. This place ruined him. Four looks up at the wall, then looks at her and goes, be careful. This upsets her even more. She lets him know, then starts to walk away, but he grabs her arm, pulls her in, and tells her, they're watching you in particular. She tells him to let her go. He does. Then asks if they're watching him as well. He doesn't answer that. And just starts ranting about how he keeps trying to help her, but she won't let him. She's like, oh, really? Because I remember you stop me in the ear, you yell at me more than anybody else, and you taunt me constantly. He explains that when he was taunting her during the knife throwing, that was to remind her why she was there, to remind her that if she failed, somebody else would have to take her place. She's confused on why this would have helped her during that time and been a good thing. But he explains it's because she's from abnegation. When she's acting selflessly, that's when she's at her bravest. And then also that she should probably be more careful and pretend that that selfless impulse is going away a little bit. Because they want her to think a certain way, aka the people in charge. And if she's not thinking that way, they have no use for her. Then she asks him why he's helping her because she's not weak. She knows she can do this on her own if needed. It's also putting him in more trouble. But he explains that his first instinct isn't to protect her, it's to push her to her breaking point, just to see how hard he has to press. And for some reason, this right here is when she's like, wow. It really is because he doesn't see her as somebody who needs to be protected and he has respect for her, I think. But just the sentence in itself, I would have been like, okay, thanks. Why do you want to break me? She barely gets out the question on why this is his first instinct, because she's so out of breath, but he explains it's because fear doesn't shut her down, it wakes her up, and that fascinates him. And then she puts her hand on his waist, he wraps his arms around her, and he pulls her in close. And as they're standing here hugging, she asks if there's something wrong with her because she's not crying right now, and then starts thinking out loud that maybe if she'd forgiven him, Al would still be there. And she just feels like it's all her fault. He assures her that it's not her fault, but she's stuck on that fact. She can't let it go. So he starts talking about how maybe there's more all of us could have done, but we just have to let the guilt remind us to do better next time now. Then she pulls back a little because, using guilt as a tool is something that abnegation teaches people. So she asks him, what faction did you come from? He tells her, she doesn't need to know that right now. Then he kisses her forehead. He didn't want to talk about that, so they just stand there hugging and he's kissing her forehead. It's quite cute, actually. Cut to a couple days later, she is now standing at the chasm with Christina and Will. They had just gotten more tattoos. She now has the tattoo of the abnegation symbol on her other shoulder, which just seems like a horrible idea if you're trying to hide that you're divergent. Just being like, oh, but I like two factions. Babes. Let's use our brain. Anyways, luckily this doesn't actually set off any alarms for anybody else, so they're just here to throw the erudite reports that have been made about abnegation into the chasm to kind of metaphorically let them go, destroy them. While they're doing this, Tris asks Will if he's ever met the head of erudite, Janine Matthews. He only met her once, but his sister actually worked with her, and they were working on making a simulation serum that would last longer. Then they get into a bit more of a politically charged, conversation path, and Christina's like, yo, we're releasing tension right now, stop, we're not talking about that. After they're done throwing all these papers into the chasm, Christina's like, it's time for bed. So they start heading back, but Tris has seen somebody out of the corner of her eye, and she tells them that she actually needs to go do something real fast and she'll meet them back there later. Christina does ask her a valid question of if she should really be walking around here by herself at night anymore. But then these two are kind of too distracted with each other because they're kind of becoming a couple slowly but surely, and Tris just assures them she'll be fine. And they're like, oh, all right. Now, the person she saw was For, heading to a place he normally doesn't go, according to Tris. So she starts following him, and he goes to the room where the fear landscape takes place. And without even looking at her, he says, well, if you're here, we might as well go into the fear landscape together. He knew she would come. And they're not going into anybody's fear landscape, any random fear landscape, not hers, no, they're going into his. Once they've both been injected with the serum, he tells her to try to figure out what his real name is while they go through this, and also if she can figure out where his nickname comes from. The first fear they have to deal with is heights. Now, she's not scared of heights at all. She's kind of loving this right now, but he is. The way to face this fear he's figured out is to just jump. So that's what they do. The next fear is confinement, and they're just standing in a room that is slowly closing in on them. Honestly, everybody's worst nightmare, I feel like. This man is starting to panic. Again, these are his worst fears, so she's doing her best to calm him down and has him basically wrap himself around her so they take up as little room as possible. She's trying to make jokes to lighten the mood, stuff like that, but he is still freaking out. But he does know normally making the room smaller will help him get out of it because he's facing his fear by being more confined, but that doesn't really work this time. She's talking him through that they need to get his heart rate down, so maybe he should just forget that they're here. That would be good. He goes, oh yeah, that easy, huh? And she makes this little quip about how most boys would enjoy being stuck in a small room with a girl. And this leads to one of the funniest lines in the book to me for some reason. He goes, not claustrophobic people, Tris. I don't know what it is about that joke that just has more Gen Z humor than anything else in this book. But it does. It has Vine energy for some reason. That's what it has. Her next plan is to ask him if he can feel her heartbeat and feel how steady it is. And all he says is, it's fast. Yeah, girl is a little flustered right now. She has this guy wrapped around her that she not so secretly has a crush on. And she tells him, yeah, well, that's nothing to do with the box. And then just instructs him to match her breathing. That also doesn't work, so she decides to ask him why this is one of his fears, because maybe they can work through it, like therapy style, I don't know. And he explains it's because one of his punishments as a child was to be locked into a closet, all by himself. She tries to go on about how her mom kept winter coats in their closet and she would go and sit in there sometimes, stuff like that, and he's like, yeah, this isn't helping. How about you tell me why your heart is racing so fast? She does her best to be like, well, I barely know you and we're crammed together in a box. He asks her then, if we were in your fear landscape, would I be in it? She assures him, though, that she's not afraid of him. And he goes, of course you're not, but that's not what I meant. I'd be dying of embarrassment right now if I was Triss. And this makes him start laughing and then they're out of the box. He's still grinning when they're able to face each other now in this empty room they're in. And he tells her, maybe she was cut out for candor because she can't lie. She informs him, though, that her aptitude test ruled out candor pretty well. And then he says that the aptitude test means nothing. She tries to dig a little more into this, but nothing comes out of it. She can't figure out if he's divergent. He won't tell her. But now they're in the next sphere. There is a woman pointing a gun at his head, and there's also a gun on the table. This isn't a fear of him getting shot or him dying. This is a fear of him having to kill an innocent person. He has to look away, but he does shoot, and they get out of that fear. Then, as they get ready for the next fear, 4 whispers, here we go. And a dark figure is at the edge of their ring of light that they have, slowly moving towards them. And then when this man steps into the light, she recognizes this man instantly as Marcus. Like, my arm, help. She whispers Marcus's name out loud, and 4 says, this is where you figure out my name. She starts to ask if Marcus is his dad, and stops mid-sentence saying, Tobias, because that's the name of Marcus's son that left abnegation for Dauntless. Then Marcus brings his hand forward with a belt wrapped around it saying this is for your own good, aiming it at 4. And then multiple Marcuses press into the circle, all doing the same thing. And Triss realizes for once the erudite were right about abnegation. Marcus did abuse Tobias. Whoa, I'm really shaky. Sorry, I got interrupted by a low blood sugar that led to dinner that led to neighbors being really noisy, and now we're back. Anyways, if you notice a difference, this will be in the middle. And Triss realizes Marcus did abuse his son, Tobias. She runs in front of him, and then Marcus hits her instead. And then he grabs the belt from Marcus, hitting him with the belt instead. Marcus launches himself at Triss, but Tobias steps in front of Triss. He doesn't look scared, he just looks angry. And then all the Marcuses vanish and they wake back up in the room. She just says, so those were your worst fears. Why were there only 4? Then it clicks. That's why it's his nickname. Let me get his right name on there now. But when she turns to look at him, she doesn't know what to say anymore because he just has this look of awe on his face. He pulls her into this hug and buries his head in her neck. And all she says is, we got through it. He then pulls away just a little and tucks a piece of hair behind her ear, saying, you got me through it. And she's just trying to keep talking right now, keep her cool as much as possible. And she's like, yeah, well, it's easy when it's not your fears. Then he just grabs her hand, lacing their fingers together and goes, come on, I gotta show you something. And they start walking. He takes her down this path at the edge of the pit that actually leads them down to the bottom of the chasm. She doesn't want to ruin this sweet moment they're having right now, but she does need to know if he's divergent. So she asks him. When he finally gives her a straight answer, he says, my results were as expected, abnegation. She's wondering if that means the same thing as hers because her results were also abnegation, technically on the logs. Then she's asking him why he would choose Dauntless then. He simply says out of necessity. Then she asks if the reason he hasn't become a Dauntless leader yet is because he might have to see his dad, and he says it's partly that, but it's also partly because he feels like he doesn't fully belong here. Not with the way the faction is currently. Then he goes on about this theory he's been thinking about how bravery and selflessness aren't that different. Because when they're put in a dangerous situation, their first thought is to forget about themselves. So it's easier for them to get through it. He truly believes he could belong in abnegation just as easily still. She tries to claim she's not selfless enough to be in abnegation, but he reminds her of every selfless thing she's done since she's been here, acting like it was just an act of bravery. She goes, you've been paying close attention, and he's like, well, I just like observing people, but she uses that same line he used on her earlier saying, maybe you were cut out for candor because you can't lie. And he finally admits he watched her because he liked her, and then asks her to stop calling him 4 because he likes to hear his name Tobias again. She has no clue how to respond to this. She's never been in a relationship before, so all she says is, "But you're older than me, Tobias." He points out that it's literally only a 2-year age gap. It's not that big of a difference. Really, the biggest problem is that he's the instructor and she's technically a student. That causes a bigger problem, and it's that really awkward time for a 2-year age gap where she's 16, he's 18. But like dystopian world, she's technically an adult here, I guess. We're not gonna get into all the nitty-gritty of that. They're cute. They're cute. It's a fiction book and they're cute. And then Triss has to get all self-deprecating about how she's not pretty after he claims that she is. And he drops that, just saying, "Okay, so you're not pretty, so?" Tobias, why would you say that? Come on, man. No, please, don't let her get away with this. The killer is the Skybang. Anyways, he goes on to compliment her, saying she's deadly, smart, and brave, and she's not looking at him like he's a kicked puppy after seeing what he went through during his childhood. And then finally, after he just said she wasn't pretty, they kiss. How romantic? It's cute. Anyways, let's to the next day. She is up. She is a silly schoolgirl happy right now. She's giggling, she's laughing, she's in a great mood. Christina asks her what's going on because she's in such a good mood, and Triss, who lives in the underground Dauntless compound, goes, "Oh, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping." She can't see the sun and she can't hear the birds. But of course, it's because she's gonna see Tobias at breakfast today. They get there before he does, and then he walks in and she's about to wave at him, but he just ignores her completely and walks over to go sit next to Zeke. And all of a sudden, her chipper mood, it's gone. And the little group she's sitting with starts talking about how they're gonna start going through their fear landscapes today. But it's not gonna be their fear landscapes, it's gonna be one of the instructors. They start theorizing on whose it's gonna be, all that fun stuff. But we don't really have to sit here and theorize about it because we can just go right to that scene because I say what we do next and we're going right to that scene. They go over that the average number of fears in a fear landscape is about 10 to 15 fears. They will just be going through one of the instructor's fears today though. And of course, the lowest amount of fears is from 4 because he has a whole nickname about it, okay? We get it, you're special. By the way, he still has not looked at Triss during all of this. She is very upset right now. So we get to the point where Triss is going into the fear landscape, and unfortunately for Triss, one of the instructor's fears is that she gets kidnapped. And you know, Triss just had a horribly traumatizing experience about that, so she actually completely fails. Even though this is supposed to be where she is allowed to remember this is a simulation, she's not able to get out of there because she just went through this in real life and almost died because of it. And when she wakes up, Tobias walks over asking, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And she is still actively just trying to catch her breath through sobbing. And he continues on going, "This is pathetic. Pull yourself together." Mind you, they were just making out last night. She didn't know exactly what to expect from today, but it definitely wasn't this. This snaps something in her though, and drives basically all the weakness right out. And she looks up at him and she goes, "Shut up." And then yanks her arm free from his hand and runs out the room. And you know what this girl does instead of going back to the dorm? That would be a pretty normal thing to do right now. She decides to hop on a train. No Dauntless leader with her. She's going on a train by herself. She is breaking a rule. And where else would she go except to the erudite headquarters to see her brother? She starts walking through there, and of course everybody is parting paths for her because a random Dauntless is walking through. When she gets to the front desk, she's asking the guy who works there, "Where's Caleb? Where's Caleb Pryor?" And the front desk guy is like, "I can't just give you random people's locations. I'm so sorry about that." She starts getting more and more demanding, and then luckily Caleb shows up and he's like, "Triss?" And even though she's not supposed to show this much affection for anybody that was in her family, because again, affection over blood, she runs over to him and hugs him. And all this man can say is, "You have a tattoo?" When he asks her what she's doing here, she explains she wanted to go home, but she can't do that. And this is the next closest thing. He obviously doesn't think this was the smartest idea because it's not, but they proceed to catch up for a little bit. They get to a little bit more of a secluded area, and he fills her in about everything that's been going on here. Everybody's rushing around talking in hushed voices. Janine is giving speeches on how abnegation is corrupt basically daily at this point. He obviously doesn't believe all of this, but he does admit that he thinks maybe they have some valid points, and she just points out to him that this isn't candor. These people can lie to him, and they are smart enough to manipulate him. He argues back that he's smart too. He would know if they were lying to him. They proceed to argue about this for a little while longer, and then he says, "I think you should leave." She does, but she does turn back real fast to say, "Well, it doesn't really matter now, but Mom told me to tell you to look into the simulation serum." He's shocked that he saw their mother because he didn't see her, and is asking why she didn't come and tell him herself. She informs him it's because erudite doesn't allow any abnegation on the compound anymore. But he should have had that information available to him, and then she just walks away. But she doesn't make it out of the compound though before she's stopped by a random erudite man. And they bring her into a room with a metal desk with Janine sitting behind it. This is basically an interrogation to see if she is divergent. She brings up her test results on how there's only ever been 2 people that got test results of abnegation and still went to Dauntless. That's her and Tobias. They're so special. When she's asked what made her choose Dauntless, she gets a very dauntless attitude and she's like, why would I tell you any of that? Are you gonna punish me because I came to see my brother, you know, because of the whole faction over the blood? And then asks her why she's even in her office because she's supposed to be important and a random dauntless girl on the campus isn't that big of a deal. Janine just lets her know that the reprimanding will be left to the dauntless leaders and then brings up her other result that had to be manually logged. But she's just asking how she even has access to those records because those are supposed to be for dauntless people only. But Erudite is able to access them because they made the serums and they need to make sure everything is running smoothly still. They keep playing this cat and mouse game of Janine trying to get enough proof that Triss is a divergent and Triss acting like she has no clue what Janine is talking about and just wants to get out of there. Triss finally gets fed up enough and she goes, you know why I wanted to go to Dauntless? It's because I didn't want to be a wussy little do-gooder. I wanted out. And when she's asked if she misses her parents, she says, no, not at all. Then Janine takes it a step further, asking if she agrees with the reports they've been releasing about abnegation, and she says, wholeheartedly. Now this is all a lie, obviously, but she's just trying to get out of there without getting killed, and it worked because now she's getting driven back to the Dauntless compound by one of Janine's assistants. When she gets back to the compound, Eric is there waiting for her, and he asks her, what exactly were you thinking? All this girl says is, I don't know, because honestly, that's true. He starts going on this whole rant about how he could call her a traitor, and it's faction over blood, and is wondering if she's regretting her choices, and just keeps going on about how she's betrayed Dauntless, herself, and him. All she can get out is, but she can't explain why she actually went because that would be a bigger problem. So he keeps going on about how he may be forced to lower her rank, or even her friends' ranks. And still, all she can get out is, Then Tobias walks in asking what's going on. Eric tells him to leave. He doesn't. He actually just tells Eric that Triss is just a foolish girl and there was no need to drag her in here to interrogate her. Eric is wondering what the heck he means by this. And Tobias tells him she was just embarrassed and that's why she ran away. Triss starts to pick up Tobias's idea and she goes, I was embarrassed, I tried to, and 4 jumps back in, saying Triss tried to kiss him, but he rejected her and then she ran off like a 5-year-old. There's nothing to blame her for except her stupidity. Eric just laughs and lets her go after this. She just goes back outside and sits down on the pavement, and a little bit later, Tobias finds her out there. She fills him in on how wonderfully awful her day has been. She failed the fear landscape, then she got to go talk with Janine over here, and then Eric almost kicked her and her friends out of Dauntless. And then turns to him asking why he even cares, because he seemed to be the cruel instructor Tobias earlier and not the boyfriend Tobias. He lets her know he wasn't being cruel, he was protecting her, because if Peter or any of his friends found out that they were together, they would blame her rank on them being together, and not her own strength. She knows he's right, because he is. They make up, and then they kiss again, and then he's like, did you call me boyfriend earlier? She does her best to cover this up, and she's like, no, do you want to be? And he says yes. Ah, look at them. Cute. Then he ominously tells her that he has something he needs to tell her, but he can't tell her right now, and she needs to meet him back here at 11:30. And she's like, okay, and then she heads back to the dorm and starts chit-chatting with Christina. Because Christina came over to her bunk and she's like, hey, can you just be a girl for a second? I got something I need to tell you. Me and Will are a thing. We're super cute, we're so cute, and I think I'm in love with him. He gets all giddy, they have a little girl talk, it's really, really cute. Then once everybody is asleep in the room, she gets up to meet Tobias at 11:30. They hop on the train, and while they're riding the train, they start to kiss some more because they're a new couple, and she just figured out what kissing was. But eventually, they get up, he opens the door, and then points towards the city to the only bright spot there, and it's Erudite's headquarters. They're not supposed to have their lights on right now, but everybody around the city can see it, obviously. He explains how this made him wonder what was going on over there, and then he did some digging, and he found some supply lists that were thinly veiled war plans. And those files were sent to Dauntless by Erudite. Erudite is planning a war on abnegation, and they're going to use Dauntless to do this. 4 just doesn't understand how they're going to be using Dauntless. But that's a plotline to cover a little bit later, because right now it's time for their final test and the initiation ceremony. And it's a party atmosphere in Dauntless right now. Everybody's drinking, they're already celebrating, they're all having a great time already. The final test hasn't even happened though. They don't know who made it, they're just happy that they have an excuse to party. Triss though, shockingly, isn't in a real party mood because she is a little worried about the war that's being plotted against her old faction. That'll bring the mood down. But she gets to where she's gonna take her fear landscape test, and she can actually see another initiate on the screen going through their fear landscape, but they can only see the movements of that initiate. They can't see what that initiate is necessarily actually seeing. But they do get to see them and know when they move on. And of course, because we need to build up suspense, she gets the honor of going last since she was ranked number 1. But guess what? This is my recap and we're skipping right to her fear landscape. So she goes into her fear landscapes and it's the tall grass and the crows. We're right back where we started, baby. She's been thinking about what the simulation actually means. She's not afraid of the crows, but she is afraid of not having control. So to get control of this situation, she manifests the gun into this simulation and starts shooting the birds. And she moves right along to the next sphere, which is the tank that's filling with water. She knows she can break the glass in this one. Yes, she's allowed to do that in the book. In the movie, they're like, no, breaking the glass would be a total Divergent move when it's the most Dauntless move in the book. She breaks the glass, onto the next sphere we go. She is on a jagged rock with waves crashing against her, trying to pull her into the ocean as she clings onto this rock. This one again is about her getting control back, so she gets steady on land and then onto the next sphere. In this one, she can't move. All the initiates are around her and Peter comes over with a torch and lights the pile of wood that's beneath her. She is forcing herself not to panic as fire creeps up around her and starts to burn her. But she simply just manifests rain, saying, I think it smells like rain, Peter. And then on to the next sphere we go. She is now back in a bedroom in abnegation. There is a wall covered with mirrors. That doesn't make sense because they're not allowed to have mirrors in abnegation. Anyways, she looks out the window and there is just a man out there. This one is about people breaking in and trying to kidnap her. She again gets a gun from the closet. This is her favorite choice on how to get out of situations. And she takes care of that man, but then just more and more and more faceless people start coming after her. So she just goes back into the closet and calms down at this point, and then a door opens in the closet and we're on to the next sphere. She is flying through these. We're at the next sphere. Oh. I get such secondhand embarrassment from this one. But anyways, this one, Tobias is standing in front of her, and behind her is a 4-poster bed. Let's put 2 and 2 together. She's afraid of getting intimate. Mind you, there are a group of Dauntless leaders that are able to see exactly what's going on in her simulations. I would have to leave the faction. I'd have to be like, sorry guys, I know I ranked well, but I can't see you ever again. She's kind of panicking. She doesn't know how to get out of this situation and she goes, I'm not going to sleep with you. And then just starts laughing because this whole situation is so insane, and then she's on to the next sphere, luckily. This one, there is a gun to her head and she is forced to shoot her family, except she doesn't do that. She decides, because of how Dauntless reacted when Al left, that she's actually just going to take this for her family. And when she gets shot, she is then woken up and she is out of her fear landscape. The door opens, some of the Dauntless leaders come in, including Eric, and they congratulate her for passing her final evaluation. But before they let her go to the welcome banquet, they're like, hold up, we gotta put a tracker in you. It's a new Dauntless thing, we're putting trackers in everybody, just in case they go missing. Now, she doesn't like the sound of this, but there's nothing she can really do about it, so she gets the tracker put in her. Once that's done, they let her go and tell her the banquet will start in a couple hours. Tobias meets up with her and he confirms to her she actually only had 7 fears in this fear landscape, which is really good. And of course, the first thing she can think of though is, was he watching that? Luckily, no. And then she also confirms that nobody told him yet what happened in that fear landscape. And again, luckily, no. Then he's like, do you want to come back to my room instead of back to the dormitory? And she decides to be really brave here. And she's like, yeah, I do. So they go hang out. No Netflix and chillin', they're just hanging out. Making out a little, nothing crazy. This is an actual YA book, unlike some of you authors nowadays who decide to throw spice in the middle of YA books. I don't know why we're doing that. Anyway, she stops making out with him and she's like, look, I just don't understand what's in this relationship for you, implying other things. He calls her an idiot for thinking this way and then tells her, look, if I just wanted to do it with somebody, you wouldn't be my first choice. And she's like, whoa, whoa, rude. And he's like, no, I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean I know you're not that type of person and that's not what I want anyways. And this is where she informs him how he was an obstacle in her fear landscape. And he assures her that nothing like that will be happening in this relationship right now. and he's a lot kinder than he seemed in training. And then they start kissing again, and he touches her shoulder where she has the fresh tattoo of abnegation, and she's like, ow, and then she shows off her tattoos to him because he was asking why that hurt, and it was the tattoo, and she's like, look at my cool tattoos. And then he shows her his entire tatted back with every single faction seal for baby boy. Do you want to get caught? Again, just like a neon sign on his back being like, look at me, I'm Divergent. You cannot be this stupid. And he has this because he wants to remind himself to keep a part of every faction, but that's not what this society wants you to do. Why do you have it so openly on you? And then they talk a little more and they're like, we should probably let people in abnegation know about this possible upcoming war. You know, slight problem for them. Just maybe we should let them know. But they can't do that right now, so they start kissing again. They walk to the dining hall hand in hand, but then right before they go in, they separate so it doesn't look like they're together just yet. Christina asks Triss where she went when she gets there, and Triss is like, oh, I was just walking around, you know, definitely not making out with our leader. They start catching up, they're talking about their possible rankings, how they did in their fear landscape, what jobs they might want to pick after all this is over. Triss talks about possibly being an ambassador to the other factions, which sounds like a wonderful job for her, honestly. Then Christina asks her why some of the leaders were laughing during her fear landscape. Now she tries to lie to Christina, but again, Christina can read her like an open book. So she has to admit it was a fear of intimacy. She doesn't admit it was about 4 specifically. She's just like, yeah, it was some faceless dude. Will and Christina are now ganging up on her at this point because this is so funny to them, so Triss brings up Christina's fear of moths to take some of the heat off of her. And it works, because Will do anything to make fun of his girlfriend? I don't know. There's something. Then a microphone squeals, and one of the Dauntless leaders gets up there. He starts going over how tomorrow the top 10 ranking initiates will pick their jobs in Dauntless and they're all gonna celebrate tonight, and then they reveal the rankings. Triss is 1, Uriah is number 2, Lynn is 3rd, Marlene is 4th, they're both Dauntless borns, Peter is 5th, Christina is 6th, and then we don't really get to hear the rest of them because our group starts celebrating. Uriah is the first one to come over to Triss and be like, you beat them, you beat all of them. He is just so happy for her. He is a true hype man. Then she gets a tap on her shoulders from Tobias, who is asking if it would be too obvious if he hugged her right now. And she's like, you know what? I don't really care. So in front of everybody, they kiss. And during this kiss, Tobias's thumb brushes over the part on her neck where they injected her with the tracker. And some dots start to connect. The injection they gave her was colored. All the colored injections she's had have transmitters in them. Transmitters connect the mind to a simulation, some sort of program. Erudite developed this serum, and Max, one of the other Dauntless leaders, are working for Erudite. When they break away, Tobias is confused on why she has this concerned look on her face, but she's like, not now, meaning not here, because everybody is around them right now, and Will and Christina are standing there like, she just made out with the instructor. What's going on? He just nods, understanding this, and now Triss knows how Erudite is going to get Dauntless to fight. Now, after all the celebrating stuff like that, she goes back to the dorm, planning to sneak out to talk to Tobias later that night once everybody is asleep, but a lot happened for her that day, so she actually ends up falling asleep too, never getting the chance to tell him that Erudite is going to control Dauntless. That night, she's woken up by people moving around. She sees Christina tying her shoes, and she's asking what's going on, getting no response though. Christina doesn't even seem awake, but she's moving around. And the same goes for everybody else in the dormitory. She does her best to get ready, and when they start moving out, she follows their movements exactly because they're all moving with the same foot and arm going forward at the same time. And right now, they're marching directly towards the pit. She sees Max just standing in the hallway watching over all the Dauntless as they mindlessly walk. Then they climb up some stairs, leading them to a huge open cavern filled with mindless Dauntless. And they're heading towards a table full of guns. She knows this is because of the serum they were injected with yesterday. Right now, all of Dauntless is brain dead. The only way she is still awake is because she is Divergent. She knows she's in a simulation. But the rest of Dauntless are perfect little soldiers that won't even think before they follow an order. Right now, her best plan is to just pretend long enough to get to abnegation to possibly save her family. She knows they're going there to start this attack. They're moving to get on the train at this point, and she knows she needs to try to find Tobias because she hasn't gotten it confirmed, but she's pretty sure he's also Divergent and may be awake. Then she grabs the hand of the person who is helping everybody on the trains, and it is Tobias, and he looks as brain dead as the rest of them right now. She's starting to think she was wrong and just goes and stands in the car all by herself, trying to hold back tears, thinking she also lost him. But then, as she's standing there, somebody laces their fingers with hers. It's Tobias. He's awake. He's Divergent. The train starts moving, and again, they're clearly going towards the abnegation sector. Tobias tells her to run as soon as they get off this train, but she just says, "My family." He gets the message and stays with her, acting like another obedient, dauntless soldier. They're on the ground now, and as they get closer and closer to abnegation, she's just hearing shouting, the pop of guns, and screams getting louder and louder and louder as she gets closer. She just has to watch as a Dauntless member who is being controlled shoots a council leader from abnegation. The soldier that did it was Tori. Triss is pretty sure that if this continues, all of abnegation will die. They're now stopped, just standing in a line as Dauntless soldiers in front of them, one by one, go off to follow orders that they were programmed to follow. But they're not going to get those orders, so they're kind of panicking on what's about to happen. What are they supposed to do? When they hear Eric beside them say, "This is insane." He's telling a woman beside him that Dauntless members can still see and hear him, they just can't process what he's saying or what he's doing. And they're receiving commands from a computer to the transmitters that were injected in them last night. And then he pokes Triss's injection site to show where they injected it. Then he sees Four, and he starts ranting, kind of mocking Four, being like, "Man, I hate this guy. He could have had my position, but he didn't want it, and now I'm here. Look at me. I'm so cool." You think they would notice if one of the mindless, dauntless soldiers went missing? And this woman just tells Eric to go ahead, because Four is nothing now. As Eric is putting a bullet into his chamber, he says to what he believes is a brain-dead Four, "You should have taken Max up on his offer." Before he can shoot, though, Triss pulls her gun out and aims it at his head, telling him to get his gun away from Thor's head. Eric says, "You're not gonna shoot me," and he's kind of right because she doesn't want to kill him for some reason. I don't know. I hate when characters do this. But she doesn't want to do that. But she does shoot him in the leg. They take this chance to run, but as they're running, she gets shot in the shoulder and falls down. Tobias stops to help her, but she just tells him to run, but he doesn't do that. And they both get caught. They're then led to the front doors of the abnegation headquarters that has been taken over by Erudite and Dauntless. Janine is sitting behind a desk with a phone to her ear, telling them to send some of them back on the train, and that it needs to be guarded because it's the most important part of this plan. And then she's like, "I gotta go because, these two are here now." She looks at Triss and she's like, "Yep, I expected." Then looks at Tobias and she's like, "Honestly, I had no clue. I'm kind of shocked." But it's most likely just because his divergence is a little weaker than Triss's. Tobias basically just tells her, though, "If you're gonna kill us, just do it already." But there is a new serum she wants to test out on them because she's pretty sure this one will work on people that are divergent. But before we can really get to that, she's gotta go on this whole villain monologue about how she's gonna improve society by killing a bunch of people like all villains do. And basically her plan for any of the survivors of this abnegation attack is to just put them in Dauntless and make them mindless soldiers as well. She tries to bring up Tobias' father as a reason for doing this, and Tobias is like, "Dude, my father sucked, but he didn't go around killing a bunch of people." But now she's gotta go on to explaining how this new serum is gonna work. See, she can't control what they see and hear, so this new serum for them will just completely manipulate their surroundings. And Tobias has the honor of being the first test subject. But unfortunately, Triss is too injured, so they're just gonna take her out back. Yeah. This is the first time he truly looks terrified, and he just says, "No, I would rather die." He kind of fights his way over to her to kiss her before he's pulled back again, and she's just grateful she will have the memory of his kiss freshly in her mind right before she dies. Then this man lunges at Janine, choking her, and it takes 2 Dauntless soldiers to get him off. As she is still trying to catch her breath, she takes this new serum and jabs it into his neck. Then, once she's done, she tells the guards to let him up. Triss can see that something has changed in him and is trying to say his name, trying to get him back, but his eyes have narrowed and he's just walking directly towards her and then starts choking her instead. And again, while all this is happening, Janine is explaining that this serum manipulates him into seeing friends as enemies. She then has the guards pull Tobias off of Triss. And then she explains to Triss that that's the advantage to the serum because Tobias can act on his own. He doesn't have to get commands. Then she tells the guards to take him to the control room where they will have a sentient being to monitor things. Janine tells the guards to take Triss to room B13. As they're dragging her away, she is thrashing around with all her strength, trying to get away from them, but it's not working. And eventually she just gets knocked out. Then she wakes up in a dark room and realizes she's in a tank. It's real this time. They've decided to bring one of her fear landscapes and make it real. Yeah, the tank is filling with water. She starts laughing because this is insane and then starts sobbing because this is real and she doesn't want to die this way. Then she starts screaming because that's better than crying, and she starts punching, kicking the glass, but it's not breaking. She then notices the camera in the corner of the room and decides to just stare that down to show them that she is not afraid, and she just starts focusing on her breath and letting herself calm down. Then when the tank fills completely, she releases her last breath and just floats there. But when she opens her eyes, she sees a dark figure standing in front of her. And for a moment, it kind of looks like her mom. And then there's a bang, and the glass cracks, and she now has access to fresh air. And her mother is right there saying, "Beatrice, we have to run." When they turn the first corner, her mother fires 2 bullets and they hit both of the guards that were standing at the other end of that hallway in the head. Then her mom takes a second to make her jacket into a sling for Triss. We already knew this, but she does confirm that she was in Dauntless. Then she tells Triss that her father and brother are hiding in the basement of a building in the intersection of North and Fairfield. And that's where they're gonna go right now. She doesn't have time to ask any questions right now, they just have to go. But of course, Triss has to ask how her mom found her. Her mom explains that she has been watching the trains since the first Dauntless group arrived, just looking for her, knowing that she would be on the way. And her mother then reveals that she is also Divergent, and that's why she left Dauntless, because she knew abnegation would be safer because her mom told her. But she didn't tell Triss this because she wanted Triss to make her own decisions. And then starts to explain why divergents are so concerning to the leaders, because most citizens are easy to make think one certain way, not people that are divergent. It makes all of them difficult to control. As they've been saying all this, they've been running, and right now they have Dauntless closing in from both sides. As they're closing in, her mom tells her to go find her father and brother, and then cups Triss's cheek, telling her, "I'm going to distract them. You have to run as fast as you can." She is trying to convince her mom not to do this, but it doesn't work. When her mother runs out there to distract them, she starts running like she was instructed, but when she hears the gunshots, she turns around to watch her mother get shot and fall stiff to the ground. She starts to cry, but she has to keep on running. The Dauntless soldiers are still pursuing her, and as she's running one way, there are Dauntless soldiers with guns aimed at her, and she has a gun aimed at them. She's ready to fire until she sees who the boy is that's running at her right now. It's Will. She tries everything to get him to stop, to wake him up from this simulation, but it doesn't work and she has to kill him. Then she runs away from this alley, going towards where she knows her family is. She's far enough away from most of the Dauntless soldiers at this point, so she stops by a door close to where her family is and just screams. Then she clamps her hand over her mouth to muffle the sound and just starts to sob. And she's just repeatedly seeing Will fall to the ground over and over and over again. She eventually gets herself up, gets to the door where she knows the rest of her family is, and knocks with the secret code her mother gave her. Caleb is the one to open the door. They just stare at each other for a little bit, and then he wraps her in the biggest hug. He squeezes her a little too hard though, and she has to bite her lip to stop herself from crying. And that's when he realizes his sister's been shot. Then she sees her father, but she also sees Marcus, who makes her think of Tobias, and she has to shove that thought out of her head right now because she can't handle thinking about him. They ask her how she found this place. She explains that her mom found her, but doesn't have the energy to explain what happened to her mom quite yet. They settle her on a pallet on the floor. Caleb is asking her why she's all wet. She explains they tried to drown her, then she's asking why he's here. He explains that he actually left Erudite a little bit ago, dropped out of initiation, and he is now technically factionless. His father is like, "No, you're not. You're a part of abnegation again. You're fine." Before he left though, he had researched the simulation serum like she told him to, and he did see the plans that Erudite was going to use Dauntless against abnegation. Then they start working on getting the bullet out of her shoulder. It's not a fun process, but they get it out. Then after that's done, she has to break the news about Mom to the rest of them. Of course, they're heartbroken, but they have to keep going. And 16-year-old Triss is the one who's going to have to lead them because she's from Dauntless. Marcus over here is going on about how they need to get out of here soon because they're going to get found eventually, and it's asking her if she knows anything about Dauntless strategy. She explains this isn't Dauntless strategy, this is Erudite strategy, and then explains to everyone how Dauntless is being mind controlled right now. And that's when it clicks. They have to wake everybody up, because if they wake up Dauntless, they won't be happy about what has been done to them. They'll most likely revolt, and that way Erudite won't have an army anymore. To wake them up though, they're going to have to find the computer that's controlling them, which is probably at the Dauntless compound. She then tells them she needs anybody who can fire a gun and isn't afraid of heights. Now, there were plenty of other people in this hideout that they were in, but the people that end up going with her are the people I already mentioned. Caleb, her father, and Marcus. Great. She takes them all to the train track that all the Dauntless jump on, and she's like, "Yo, so you're all gonna have to jump on this train." And they all do that. They don't die, yet, luckily. And she takes them the same exact route she took her first day, meaning they're gonna have to jump 7 stories up onto a building. Now she has the 2 older men go first because it's a shorter jump that way. Once they've jumped, she has Caleb jump, then she jumps. Now when she lands, she sees that Caleb and her father are trying to pull up Marcus because he almost fell, and she's kind of just standing there like, fall, 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 fall. Remember, horrible father to Tobias. But he doesn't fall. He gets brought back up and she's like, okay, fine. Then she takes them over to the other ledge and she's like, okay guys, we all have to jump off here. There's a net at the bottom though, and she jumps first. And the rest follow. She knows her goal right now is to find Dauntless soldiers because they're not going to be guarding anywhere else except where the computers are. They're walking in darkness for a while, and the first patch of light they go through, they get shot at. But nobody gets hit. A voice shouts out for them to stop and surrender their weapons, but Trish just tells the rest of them to stay here while she goes and takes care of this guy. And when she gets closer, she realizes it's Peter, and he's definitely awake. So she gets herself ready, and she sprints over there, and she punches him in the face. Making him drop to the ground, dropping his gun, she grabs it and aims it at him. She's asking him how he's awake. He explains that the Dauntless leaders evaluated his records and removed him from the simulation. Her theory on why they did this is because he has murderous tendencies already. They didn't need to control him to make him do anything awful. Then she asks him where the computers are. He's like, I'm not gonna tell you, you're not gonna shoot me. She's wondering why people keep saying this to her today, then goes on this little rant and then shoots him in the arm. Then she asks him again where the computers are. But before he tells her where these computers are, he makes a deal with her that if he tells her, she will get him out of here, because if he tells her and then the Dauntless leaders get to him, they're just gonna kill him. They agree that Peter will lead them to the computers and she will get him out of here safely. Then she takes him over to the rest of the group and they're like, did you have to shoot him? And then they're even more shocked when she explains that he's going to lead them to the computers, and they're like, he's injured. She points out she didn't shoot him in the leg, he can still walk. So off they go. But as they're walking, her father comes over to her and he goes, I can't believe you shot him. There's a right way to do things. And she points out that every second they waste here, another member of Abnegation dies. So right now, there isn't just one right way to do things. On their way there, they run into some more guards. She runs ahead, deals with them, but as she's about to finish off the last one, he just drops his gun and points them towards the control room. This random man is also Divergent. She calls everybody up to her now and they continue to follow Peter. They're really close now, and she knows how to get there with just directions and also following where the guards are, so she tells Caleb, Marcus, and Peter to all stay behind, and her father are going to go ahead and do this together. When her and her father get into the elevator away from everybody else, he thanks her for protecting Caleb. He knows that's why she left Caleb behind as well. When the elevator doors open again, there are 2 guards waiting for them. She drops to the floor and starts shooting. Her dad is shooting as well, and he actually hits them. Then she hears the sounds of guards running down the hallway to their left, and she knows that means that's where the computers are. She gets down low again, hiding between the guards that just got shot, planning to shoot the guards running at them, but her father runs out into the hallway and starts sprinting down the hallway, going right, leading the guards away from her. But she knows that hallway is a dead end, and she knows what will happen to her father. She hears him get shot and the sound he makes. And when she looks back at him, she just sees him slumped on the ground. She has no time to grieve right now though, and she just has to go down that hallway. When she gets to the end, she opens the door and sees a wall made of screens. And they all show various parts of the city. And she also sees that one of the screens has a series of code running through it and knows that must be the program that is controlling all the Dauntless. And of course, the person sitting in the chair watching all of this is Tobias. Tobias turns around, sees her, and tells her to drop her weapon. She says, Tobias, you're in a simulation, but he just again tells her to drop her weapon or he'll fire. She puts her weapon down, and again he says, drop your weapon. She says, I did. He's still aiming to shoot her. She can't just let that happen, so she runs over, grabs his wrist, and ducks down out of the range of the gun. Then kicks him in the ribs and twists his wrist so hard he drops his gun. She knows she can't beat him in a fight, but she has to stop the computers. She dives for the gun, but before she can grab it, Tobias grabs her and wrenches her away from it. And then he punches her in the jaw. They continue to fight and scramble for the gun like this for a while. At one point, he's pulling his foot back to kick her. She is stretching out for the gun, but she doesn't know what she will do when she grabs it because she won't shoot him. She knows that. He grabs her hair and shoves her into the wall. She just says, Tobias, pleading that he's in there somewhere, and she thinks she feels his grip falter just a little. So she twists and kicks back at him, landing her heel in his leg. When he drops her, she drops down, grabs the gun, and points it at him, saying, I know you're in there somewhere. She's begging him, saying, please, please see me, but he continues to just walk towards her on autopilot. And as he gets closer, knowing that she can't shoot him, she aims the gun at herself and puts it into his hands. And then puts her hands on his chest to feel his heartbeat as she hears the sound of the bullet getting loaded into the chamber. She is standing there, feeling his heartbeat, getting ready to face whatever is waiting on the other side, but the shot never comes. She again says, "Tobias, it's me." And he steps forward and wraps her into his arms. And she hears the sound of the gun clattering to the floor. Gun safety 101, don't throw your gun, but okay. He then grabs her shoulders a little too hard for comfort, because she just got shot there a little bit ago, and she cries out in pain, pulling back from him, and starts to worry that maybe this isn't really him, but he just says, "Tris," and then wraps her into another hug, lifting her up, holding her as tight as he can. When he puts her down, he caresses her face, making sure it's actually her, and then kisses her. When she asks how he got out of the simulation, he just tells her he heard her voice. Then they remember where they are and what they're supposed to be doing right now, and finally get back to that. The cute reunion, but guys, people are dying right now. Luckily, he knows how to turn off this simulation, but it's gonna take just a little bit of time. But as he's working on this, she sees Dauntless guards closing in on where her brother, Peter, and Marcus are. She's shouting for Tobias to kill the simulation now, and luckily, he does. And she sees all the Dauntless guards go still. Then they start moving, dropping their guns, looking like they're shouting at each other. She sees some people scream, shoving their hands over their ears. Some of them drop to the ground, holding their head, rocking back and forth. Goes into the physical computer to get the actual data chip out of there so they can't just restart the simulation. Once he gets the data, they know they need to leave. They get back to the others. She didn't think to warn him that Marcus was here, so there's a lot of tension there, and she steps between them and she's like, "If you ever come near him, I will kill you myself." And Caleb was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa." And she's like, "No, the reports were right about him, okay?" He tries to defend himself, and she assures him that the only reason she doesn't take care of him right now is because Tobias is the one who gets that honor. And he better be careful because she might just decide that she doesn't care about that any longer. Then Tobias is the one to be like, "Okay, we gotta go." Because a train should be here any second, leading them out of the city. As they're walking, she apologizes to him for overstepping, but he assures her it's okay. He actually appreciates it. They all get on the train that is going to take them towards Amity headquarters that is outside of the city. Now, Amity is all about peace. They won't want any part of this, so they will be safe there for a little while. As they're sitting on this train, she's wondering how this will affect everybody, how this will affect Christina when she finds out that Will is no longer there, how Tori will feel knowing that she was used like that. But Tobias just pulls her close and they offer comfort to each other on this train ride. She talks through how both of her parents died today. They died for her, and he assures her that this is the greatest act of love they could have given her. Remember, they pride themselves on being selfless, and what is more selfless than sacrificing yourself for the good of everybody else? Then as they're sitting there a little longer, he goes, "I have something to tell you. I might be in love with you. I'm waiting until I'm sure to tell you though." She assures him that that's very sensible and they should try to find some paper so he can make a pros and cons list. And then he's like, "Okay, well, maybe I'm already sure, and maybe I just don't want to scare you." She just goes, "Dude, we're in Dauntless, the faction of bravery," or we were in Dauntless, but you can't scare me. Then he says, "I love you." They proceed to kiss for a long while. Mind you, Caleb and Marcus are in the same car, just like, cool, great. I don't care how Marcus is feeling about this. Obviously, he could jump out of the train. I could care less. But poor Caleb is just like, Then after they're done kissing, she takes the hard drive that has the simulation data on it and she sees Marcus eyeing it very greedily. And she's like, "He's not safe. We already knew that, but he's like really not safe." And this brings us to the very end of book 1 of Divergent. Abnegation and Dauntless are kind of scattered everywhere. Those factions are broken. Erudite's probably a bit of a mess, but not as bad. And poor Amity and Candor are like, "Guys, what did you do?" Our little group over here is now factionless. She has no clue what their life is gonna look like now. She just knows that she will keep having to push on, and that right there is the end of book 1 of Divergent. You're welcome. Thank you for spending your time with me. I truly have so much fun with these recaps. Thank you for letting me just chat about stories for so long and give you all the nitty-gritty details. This is my favorite thing to do. And hopefully we can get to that 2K like goal and we can do the next book in this series, but if not, we'll find another fun series. Do let me know in the comments though, for future series, if you want to see more classics like Shatter Me, the Cinder series I've heard a few people suggest, maybe Percy Jackson, who knows? Or if you want to see some newer series like Powerless, I've done Fourth Wing, looking at my bookshelf, Legendborn, One Dark Window, stuff like that. Let me know if y'all have any suggestions. I am always looking for new chaotic book series 2 recap because this was just so much fun, and I hope y'all enjoyed it. And I think with that being said, just remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help a girl out more than you know. Truly more than you know. Thank you for all of y'all that already do that. Y'all are amazing. And I guess with that, I will see y'all in the next video, which will probably not be one of these, but there'll be another one next month. There always is. I have a problem.